in one beautiful magical place. Near a huge temple and an insane number of birds flying through the sky, there was a guy named Chin who was farming. Today, he had already finished cultivating the 108th field of peonies, which he was insanely happy about. Suddenly, a notification from the system appears in front of him. He's been rewarded. Now his level has been raised to the 9th level. However, he couldn't realize how much his strength had increased. He asked the system to show all of its characteristics. They didn't look the best, especially the intelligence, which was exclusively 1 star. But still, he will try to become a better person and find a girl named Qing Shui. And at the same moment, he was immersed in his fantasies with this beautiful girl. Just then, a girl in a blue dress came in. She noticed what her mentor brother was doing. He tried to justify himself somehow and explain that she had misunderstood everything. As suddenly, all talk ended when she touched his face. She said she realizes her mentor has grown up, and now she will try to keep him company more often. The hero countered that she herself realizes she doesn't want that. She asks him to be quiet for a bit and still agrees with what he says. The girl remarks that he has already grown up and that at the top of the hidden sword, the lad is absolutely alone, and that it is difficult to bear the loneliness of the deaf knight. He tells her to get it over with already and asks what business the mentor's sister is here for. She reports that new adepts are joining Kunlun Jian today, so the sect head allowed Qing Yu to come. She notes that after sister mentor Qing left, the hero never took any adept to him, and the sect leader has a lot of complaints about that. It's not a matter of refusing such a thing, since he's not much willing to train someone. He promises to go, but first he has to change his clothes. In response, the girl offers to go with him. He immediately refuses. Meanwhile, at the gate, 2 men were discussing the fact that the maiden had escaped into the sect, and now the head needed to make a decision. They decide on their own to return to the demonic sect. And so, in one of the beautiful places near a huge castle, people gathered. Mo Wen-tian, the head of the Kunlun Jin sect, was the center of attention. Near her was the main character, who was dressed in special clothes. Girls were just crazy about his beauty and wanted to get a kiss from him. Men, on the other hand, were not happy and thought he was just a regular guy. The head only noticed that the man was just reading a book on how to do nothing, to which she was very shocked. She expressed her displeasure to him about what he was doing, and he didn't understand anything, since it was kind of like she had given her own permission for him to come. She became even angrier. She couldn't understand how he could cross her. The girl wanted to save the situation by asking her to stop teasing her brother anymore. She realizes that she has been the sole victor of the holy limit for 1,000 years, and she has taken a fancy to brother Qing. The hero heard all the discontent from the people. Men were displeased with the fact of how one could fail to improve. They had doubts in their minds that beauties do nothing. And then it is announced that the selection process is beginning. People were happy and sad whether they passed or not. And then the next very beautiful girl in a white and black dress and meowling is announced. The men even almost started fighting over her, so much they liked her. Putting your hand on the magic orb, a magical energy of immense power poured out of her. The head immediately realized that it was the blood of the icy wind. She wanted this girl to become an adherent of her sect and asked if she would agree to it. But the girl declined the offer. And that's when the rest of the summiteers faltered as they realized they had a chance, and immediately began to offer the services of their sex. The chapter notes that the peak she wants to climb is for her to choose for herself. And then looking at the main character, who at this time was just reading a book in his seat, she said she wanted to join the pinnacle of the hidden sword. The hero was puzzled. He didn't understand why this was happening. He was just watching everything that was happening. Diving into the girl's memories, it turns out in a past life she was a cruel empress. But having met the 3rd executioner in the empire, she was soon betrayed and murdered. Once reborn, she almost became a slave, but she managed to escape. She decided to join a cult, to find a weak teacher there. And the main task is not to reveal himself, his origin, and with the help of notes to regain the empire. And when the time comes, she can destroy all humans. But now, walking inside the palace of the protagonist's apex, he showed her future room. Lin didn't understand. Hadn't the guy been taught any hygiene at all? There was so much dust that she started coughing nonstop. The boy tried to take in her ruddy face. She immediately pulled back with a squeal. The girl couldn't think she was being groped. But the guy just wanted to wipe the dirt off her face and couldn't understand why she was so turned on. Lin ran off to the other side of the room. She was still in some shock at what had happened. In her thoughts, she remarks that in her past life, men couldn't look at her, and he dared to grope her. Since Qing had become his disciple, she must adhere to some rules. First, he's quite busy growing fruits and vegetables, so maybe Chinya won't have time to train the girl. But the girl did not listen to him at all. for she was already imagining how she would recover and cut off his finger with which he had touched her. His second rule is that he will run some errands from time to time. Until now, the girl had been in her fantasies of chopping off not a finger, but an entire hand for what he had done, and he still wonders if she wants to be his student under those rules. And without a second thought, she says what she wants. The hero doesn't understand why she bows to the teacher with a gun in her hand. Just then, Chinya gets a notification from the system that several rewards have been fulfilled at once, as well as information about the reborn Empress. He was insanely excited as he received some very cool awards. The student couldn't understand why he was rejoicing. Finished, he still recognizes that she sees him as a teacher. He decides to give her a gift from himself. She was skeptical of such a gift at first, as she couldn't believe he could give any good thing. But there was a sword in her hand. She was surprised at how well it fit in her hand. After a moment, Lin realized that it was an elite imperial weapon. She couldn't believe that the teacher wanted to give her this sword. Chin confirms everything, calling this sword pretty good. All weapons and techniques are divided into several stages: Golden, Black Earth, Sky, Imperial, and August. Each degree is divided into several ranks from the lowest to the highest. The girl met her doom just because her weapon was of low rank. She wonders why the guy treats her so kindly, even though they've never met him. He doesn't understand what the big deal is at all. Suggests that the teacher should have given the student his welcome gift. Also offers to return the sword if she won't accept it. And the new gift will be old socks. Lin naturally didn't want to return it, and began to ponder about her teacher after all, just as a little of her blood got on the sword. Magical energy began to come out of the sword in insane amounts. The girl herself was surprised by this. An entire beam of energy went straight into the sky from the palace. Everyone noticed it, both the sect leader who was smoking a pipe at her castle, and even some unknown animals. Some guy got interested in the cult, and decided after he got out to pay a visit. But the whole magical process is halted by the protagonist. After stopping the girl, he informs her that the head of the cult has arrived. Lin was shocked that with just one wave of his hand he was able to extinguish the anomaly. The teacher asks to go outside with him. As soon as the girl saw the head that was levitating above the ground, she decided to greet her. Walking up to the hero, taking him by the chin, she said grudgingly for the hero to at least be ashamed. They were supposedly the ones who had created the anomaly she had seen a moment ago, and it had been made with the utmost of living spirit. She wondered if it was true. And I thought it was a normal situation. But here was a woman noting that this anomaly had appeared on her land, and now she was likely to get in trouble for it. As she leaves, she asks to be careful, and just disappears on the spot like she was never here. The apprentice once again summons the leader of the sword order of her teacher. She couldn't believe that she was actually holding an imperial weapon that could reach the heavens. She also noticed that her teacher was able to destroy this anomaly with a single wave of his hand. Now this guy is getting more and more interesting to him. In another place, as the sun rose, a bird-like creature was doing push-ups in a separate cell. It had thought of waiting a moment before escaping from the demon's clutches. Just then, all her thoughts were stopped by the fact that someone had taken her by the throat. She begged the ruthless demon to stop, but he kept hurting her. Turns out it was the main character, and he took the meat so his student would have a good meal. Meanwhile, in the bamboo forest, the girl was beginning to train with her new weapon. She was trying to find out the most important essence of the frost sword. So far, even with her experience in her past life, she really didn't have it easy. The teacher calls her to eat, but she refuses because it is Lent and she will not eat. A teacher appeared in front of her eyes and said that one must eat. She was surprised at such a rule, and wondered why she had to. The teacher objected and said it was his rule and the girl had to go. When she arrived, she noticed a pile of very tasty-looking food on the table. She appreciated the wonderful smell, and felt as if she'd already eaten. But then the hero showed up saying he was bringing her chicken soup. But there was a crazy smile on his face. The character notes that after she eats, she should have an awakening of the first level of the golden limit. He brings a plate over to her, and she wonders if the teacher is okay. The limits of perfection are divided into an insane amount. Also, each limit has its own 3 levels. The girl was incredulous that breaking through the limit was as easy as eating soup. But as soon as she tasted this soup, she dropped her plate. The hero was glad it actually worked. The girl didn't realize what the feeling inside her was. It was like everything was boiling. It takes the heart 20 seconds to complete one cycle, but that heat flow only needs 10 or even 5 seconds. The girl tried to be patient but realized she couldn't last that long. She was crazy with pleasure. She had never eaten anything tastier before in her life, and soon she realized that she had indeed broken through the limit. The master confirms everything, and he says he wouldn't have killed the Crow King for nothing. The girl was surprised at the fact that he actually made soup out of the three-legged Raven King. She couldn't believe that this soup definitely didn't stop at the living spirit limit. Still finding the strength to stand up, she decided to say something to the teacher. But here the hero immediately asked her to shut up, saying that every person should have a secret. And then fear crept into the girl's mind. If he knew who she was. Here thoughts were interrupted by Chin, who took her lips and reminded her that she needed to eat everything on the table. Then clears the table and decides to leave. She was annoyed again at the fact that he was touching her. Still, she would rub his hand off someday. Meanwhile, in a very cold winter place, covered in snow and surrounded by mountains, a cry of displeasure from someone was heard. Turns out there was a whole verbal scuffle going on among the three creatures and the main character. The hero came here to borrow the spirit and blood of the Dragon Emperor. One female creature thought it sounded pretty cool, but her mate was afraid that the stranger wanted to kill them. The third giant was annoyed at such words and decided to attack the hero. Soon his comrade, covered in white fur, decided to attack from the back. Chin realizes he has to fight. If they won't give him what he needs, he'll take it himself. Taking advantage of his power, he breaks the weapon of one of his opponents. He was shocked by what had happened. His divine weapon has been destroyed in his hands. Suddenly, a huge turtle appeared in front of him. At the will of the protagonist, she captured him with her huge mouth. The hero has dealt with one of his enemies. Now there are two more. He asks them to surrender, as the hero is in a great hurry. The largest of them asks the female creature to follow his gimmick. She agrees, but remarks that she is sorry to spoil such a beautiful face. And at the same instant, a magic vortex of monstrous proportions appears. The hero manages to dodge it, and also notices that it's quite a difficult technique. But luckily for him, he can do that too. Unleashing his power by utilizing the four corners of the world, he sends dozens of swords towards the enemies. Both opponents fell on the ground after the guy's attack. It turns out that the hero has been off the mountain for a few days now, and he wonders if his students miss him. Meanwhile, during the night, there was a huge explosion at the summit. The sound and smoke is noticed by Lin. She assumes the teacher has already returned. And indeed, at the epicenter of the explosion was the protagonist. The girl remarks that as soon as he returned, he immediately made such a commotion. She asks if he really blew up the pill-melting room. Without answering that question, he remarks that the girl was on time. He puts a green orb in Lin's hand. It's the one he found especially for her. She didn't realize at first what the green-colored sphere in her hands was. And then remembering the teacher's words about the Demon Emperor's pill, that such a thing even in her previous life was difficult to get, she was shocked. She realizes that all this time the teacher has been absent, because he was looking for this thing for her. He doesn't understand why she hasn't eaten it yet. He assumes it's bitter. She replies that it's not that at all. It's just that they're not in the best place. Looking around, he realizes this. It won't be so convenient to do it here, in a quiet place in the palace in his room. She gains strength and accepts a cherished gift from her teacher. Now in the girl's body, she can slowly send out chi. She has a normal state this time, so the awakening should go well. Suddenly the girl jumped on top of the protagonist. The student with an excited look told of her certain desire. And once a guy decided to assume what a girl had become. At the same moment, she paused his thoughts with a kiss. It becomes known that the hero Chin is a time traveler who got the system. At the same moment, his innocence is infringed upon. He asks the student to stop, as they are not allowed to do anything like that. She says she wants to copulate with the teacher, and that her only desire was to learn the teacher's taste. The hero realizes that the Demon Emperor's pill has stopped working. Now all he has to do is awaken it in the girl's body. Suddenly, a terrible scream echoed throughout the street. Lin bit the teacher on his cheek, to which he was quite displeased. At the same moment, there was a release of the girl's powers. The hero was glad that it had finally worked. The system rewarded the hero again for his apprentice awakening a new power. Also in the end, the hero's innocence was preserved. Lin lost consciousness for a while due to her awakening. In the same room, but sometime later, the teacher sips tea and waits for the moment when the student wakes up. And as soon as it happened, he immediately noted that the girl was solely to blame for the incident. And he behaved decently, and asks her to remember something for the future. And with the words that student and student are different, runs out of the room. The girl only wondered what she had done. Suddenly she begins to realize what has happened. The girl started chasing the guy, which could be heard outside the building. But then she was stopped by the appearance of all the summit representatives with the head at once. They wondered if Lin had really awakened her blood. She was a little unsure of this fact. The chapter is happy about this fact, as now two with such holiness will come out of her cult. The rest of the men have swept up the fact that a girl with such talent can't stay on that pinnacle. The disciple began to defend the teacher, and remarked that solely with Qingya's help, she was able to achieve this. They are asked to leave this peak as they are not welcome here. This conversation was halted by a loud shout from a man who was climbing to the top. He notifies that Kunlun has been attacked by an unclean entity. The head asks the girl to hide with her teacher. Rather, the Ice Phoenix ghost summoned by the girl had attracted so much attention. The chapter is ordered to meet this foul thing. The warriors all gathered in one place awaiting the threat. The skies above them began to overflow with terrifying clouds. The already familiar dragon was searching for the ancient blood of the Ice Phoenix, and I finally found her. She's here. With a shout, he orders to give out what he wants now. From his words, strong torrents of wind rose up. Lin realized that it was the breath of an ice dragon, a demon emperor. It gave her something like a familiar feeling, as if something in her was responding. Then she realized that the Dragon Emperor pill and the blood that it contained had awakened deep-seated feelings in her. That's why she was acting like that with the teacher. Lin broke in on the teacher, wondering if he had done this to her on purpose. But there was no one in the room. The head was already ready to solve the problem with the dragon. She attacked him and remembered him boasting about his power. The girl was insanely displeased with the fact that he wanted to destroy her cult. The demon remarks that his power isn't strong enough to do that. Well, with the help of a macaca, we're green, Pétain. They can wipe this place out in 5 minutes and she can't even protect her sect. The chapter is shocked at the fact that there are other demon emperors. Meanwhile, the very ones were already beginning their assault, though they were late due to the fact that they were recovering. The protagonist sends a paper airplane number 78 and orders it to catch up with them. One of the emperors wonders if the paper airplane is one of the other's new pets. It turned out to be all wrong, and the paper started to catch fire when it reached them. There was a huge explosion in the sky. The enemies remained fine, but their shock was hard to explain. And at the same moment, a large bucket appeared in front of them. It featured the main character ordering the emperor to go back to where they came from. They immediately remembered who was standing in front of him, and that he was the one who had injured them. They were surprised from the fact that he was a member of the Kunlun Sword School. They decide to leave, but the hero still wanted to give them a reward for recognizing who he was. Suddenly, a huge golden dragon hand swooped down on them from the sky, which made them scream with fear. After such an attack, they were lying on the ground, all covered in blood. The guy was disappointed that they were so weak and only took one hit. Meanwhile, the remaining demon emperor and the cult leader stood looking at each other. The woman thought over the fact that an hour had passed and no one would come to the aid of her enemies. The emperor orders his soldiers to leave. People realized that they were saved, and it was all because of the chapter. The woman pondered the fact that the demons of the desert mountains were watching Lin, and what she would need to send through the gathering. The emperor was very angry at being ignored, and the servant tried to calm him down, but it didn't help. He just took his anger out on him. A hero flew by with a captured buffalo and the thought of eating beef today. After just a few days in the bedroom, Chin began to wake up. Opening his eyes, he was surprised at how strong the sun was shining. Immediately, he realized that his room could only see the sunset, not the sunrise. Turns out he slept all day. It's been a month now, and Lin has finally stopped bothering him. The girl found herself in a forest, entangled in some magic similar to a spider's web. Chin appears and informs the girl that the food is ready. Lin is practicing to control the threshold of the higher one's impassivity notes. She doesn't need food. The hero recalls that he has heard something like this somewhere before. Indeed, this is one of the great paths to the imperial skill of exasperation. But only the girl got it all wrong. The character explains the true nature of these records and what can be gained from them. The hero recommends that the student choose the path of the sword over anything else, and gives her the august degree of Supreme Imperial. Asking for a small fee in return, the girl agrees to his deal. She was insanely excited about the item she had received, as even with her experience, she couldn't find it. And at the moment, it was right in her hands. As she's about to leave, she turns to the teacher and thanks him for this book. After a while, the teacher decides to check out what Lin has learned from these notes after all. Out of the blue, a girl shows up in a tree in the woods. She goes down to earth and meets the protagonist there. She's another of Chinya's students. The girl wondered what he was doing. He replies that Lin's skill was wrong. Ching was immediately worried and asked if she was all right. Shiba notes that all is well, and now, she's learning the newest skill she's never had before. Lin tried to focus on herself in order to immerse herself in her meditation as much as possible, but she was very much disturbed by extraneous voices and sounds. She asked the teacher and Ching to leave, as they are interfering with her studies. The heroes notice that they do it all on purpose, as the girl needs to learn to find calm in any situation. So he's coaching her mood on purpose. He also notes that the sooner this is over, the better. The girl started pulling her sword out of its sheath, wondering why she did it. And at that very minute, behind the two people, the girl began to run screaming. One night, Chinya had an encounter with one of the demon emperors. Their conversation begins with the fact that he shouldn't have come here, and at the same moment, there was a flood of punches on the protagonist. But none of them were successful. The hero got away with it, going to the reservoir and taking out a barrel of wine. The emperor began to ask to keep this wine, as it was his. But Chin notes that it has his name on it, so it belongs to him now. Now he and Lin will taste the wine. On the way home, he even gets an award for what happened. Meanwhile, on top of the hidden sword in the bamboo forest, Chin thanked Lin for being able to reach the true path of the sword. Indeed, when she trains with a girl, her results get better. She, on the other hand, is going to go back and promises to tell the teacher about Lin's good results. At the same time, the girl herself decides to go for a swim, already stripped and tasting the water. And it sinks down to his shoulders. The thought pops into her head that this is when someone is supposed to show up. And indeed, out of the thicket comes her teacher. He tells her that he has prepared food, and she should go and eat. Something like this has happened to him more than once. When asked by the girl if he does it on purpose, he confirms. He talks about the wine, and how it's been fermenting for 8 whole years. So he asks her to hurry up and get dressed and come over. But all he gets in response is a towel slapped over his head and words to get the hell out of here. Later, the hero sat on a chair and looked up at the sky while humming a song. The student did wonder what the teacher was pondering about again. I also noticed that the hero smiles very lecherously while looking at her. Chin replies that he's not thinking about anything. The teacher praises the student's clothing. She confirms it, remarks that she bought a bra that's very tight. It's like there's not enough air in there. Part of the dress rips right into the foreheads of the characters, after which she started running after the teacher. On a raised fire, soup was cooking. Chin and Lin were sitting beside him. The teacher noticed that the hero's cooking skills were getting better and better. Suddenly he senses that the half-saints have spent people, and by a cult it could mean that something is going to happen. He asks to go up to the main summit to look around. At the top of the mountain, you can see that a large number of people have gathered. There was a pact, by which each sect was to nominate its own fighters. But that's half the truth. In fact, everyone wanted to meet the legendary ancient bloodline. The head realizes that the old fox has far from good intentions, and here he is already apologizing aloud to him, since Lin is shut up. Penglai Bei sect's chief disciple stood there in boredom as his opponent's lightning summoning failed. His opponent, a disciple of the head of the Peak Imperial Thunderhead, promised that the enemy would regret his words. With just one tug, flew to the enemy and warned her not to complain to anyone. For now, he decided to answer using one skill he had. He sent his opponent far into the wall with just one blast. The people who watched it all were shocked at what had happened. Shao apologized for destroying the enemy so quickly. He believed that he would last for more than 2 strikes. Now he's in anticipation of his next opponent. He started looking for a rival already in the crowd of people outside, but no one agreed to it. As here, the Qing girl asks about going to go fight this guy. The head gives permission to do so, but asks that it be safe. In response, the girl points out that it will be safe if she calls Lin. The apprentice explains that the protagonist is already teaching completely different things to Lin's sister, so she's already graduated. The head was surprised from the fact that Qin was teaching the way of the sword, and the disciple was internalizing it. She didn't understand why the boy wanted to hide it, since he himself had said that Lin was practicing on the nature of fire for now. That's when the girl entered the arena and nominated herself as the next enemy. This fight offers to raise the stakes, namely a place in the limitless military limit. If any of them lose, their spot goes to the opponent. The head orders the girl to agree to this deal, which she does. Their fight begins. The guy immediately fails at attacking the girl with an AE, which he picks up on and says that she really knows the point of the sword. In response, the girl replies that the guy is exceptionally able to speak loud words. He, offended, decides to show her his true power, showing a limit that is one step ahead of the essence of the sword, the ability to manifest a fusion of essence and skills into one. The tremendous impact cracked even the base of the arena. He hit the girl with his powers. She was wounded. The head was worried about her apprentice as she couldn't let her die. The guy was surprised she flew so high. Just as suddenly, a sword fell to the ground and stabbed into the ground. Immediately, Lin and Qin formed, who rescued the girl. As soon as the girls from the audience noticed the hero, they immediately began to praise his beauty. Couldn't figure out at what point Qin is beautiful, though. What he truly appreciated was the beauty of his student. He immediately introduced himself to her as the very first disciple of the Heaven Sect, and wanted to know her name. Osman, as the head of the sect, was happy that the target they had been waiting for had finally appeared. There was an immediate conflict with this guy. The girl stood up for her teacher, as she didn't think he was at fault. And then Shao remembers that there was once a rumor about a handsome loser who was on Kun Moon. and now he realizes it's right in front of him. He assumes that all these girls are blinded by his beauty, but he won't let it go. He will rescue them from his clutches. And as soon as he said that, thoughts of what he and the girls would do immediately popped into his head. A teacher orders a student to show her full strength to this guy as punishment for his behavior. Immediately there was enemy talk. Still, people believe in her victory because of the ancient blood flowing in her. The head wonders how long he will keep Ching in his arms, and replies that he only wants to help her. Guy is counting on the perfection of the new opponent to be no greater than the past. He decides to show all his strength as well as his manners, so asks the girl to start first. Just then, in the blink of an eye, an enemy weapon appears near him. Lin's punch pierced through the opponent. If it wasn't for the protagonist's request, he would have already been lying on the floor. The guy was outraged by this. He purposely gave in to the girl and doesn't understand why she hurt him so much. He decides to answer her in full force. But the moment the spell is conceived, the girl chops her opponent's sword to pieces. She points out that the attack itself was too hatchet-headed, and decides to show him the true skill of the sword essence. I attack him, inflicting dozens of wounds. A hurricane of pink magic swirled on the battlefield, causing the spectators to be astonished and take note of the girl's talent. He couldn't even believe in the completed essence of the sword. I asked myself one question only. How is this possible? In response, the girl remarks that nothing about it is impossible and decides to show him the final trick at the end. And before attacking, advises him to think about his mother. At the same second, a wave of magic went towards the enemy. In the head of the head came the thought that this was a victory. And indeed, the guy's body was completely frozen, and the people were in mad joy at the victory. It was now known that Lin was the most important in the new generation. The old man gives back the reward they agreed upon. The head thanks him for it. And taking his apprentice, he set out for his native land. But he had no sadness. He was able to find what he was so eager to find. The teacher and son praised the girl for her fight. Meanwhile, the old man had already returned to his homeland, where he reported that he had found the best place to be reborn. And the Empress of Heavenly Demons, Mu, was madly pleased about this and orders him to come to her when the time comes. He thanks her and accepts the order. The Empress had already started thinking about how she would take revenge on those who had humiliated her in the past. Already in the limitless secret limit, at once, 3 sects spent a lot of effort to open it. Such an opportunity comes once every 20 years. Inside it, you will be able to find a lot of things you need, but there are 2 restrictions. People with a limit level of nirvana or lower can get in, and the total number of people must be no more than 9. The key to the limit is a plaque that is in everyone's hand. You are only allowed to stay there for a week, and if there are no further questions, you can leave already. And a group of people from the Kunlun sect led by Lin set out. As soon as the girl passed the limit, the Heavenly Demon Empress sensed this. She gives the order to bring her to her. For some time now, the girl had been walking through the unusual forest eating the fruit. She got separated from her little sister Yan, and now she doesn't know what to do since Matsu's head didn't tell her what to do in such a situation. Suddenly, noticing a rustle in the bushes, she thought to herself that she had met people, but it turned out to be a common raven, which she chopped up with a single swing. Suddenly, an unusual scroll fell to the ground. There can be many different things in the limit. That's what the chapter was talking about. The scroll depicted the sacred fruit of the heavenly phoenix. She remembered that with just one bite he would help break through the limit of nirvana. What helps the girl a lot is that she decides to find him. All the while, another raven follows her. After traveling quite a long way and taking her time, she finds the right fruit. They turn out to be several, so she gets even more use out of them. While taking one step in their direction, the girl began to be enveloped by magical chains. The girl realized she was caught in a blocking seal. She was trapped in someone else's trap. The hunter's laughter was all that could be heard. The Empress began to rejoice at the fact that Lin's body was now hers. But the girl realized that everything that had happened was a conspiracy, and his goal was to be reborn in her body. The Empress began to notice that something was wrong with her prey. The girl began to sink completely into the ice. Lin beat the Empress, making her furious. In a fit of anger, she asked the girl to come out to her after all, and Lin did indeed appear before her eyes. The woman noted the girl's face. She recognized her as the cruel Empress, except that the girl herself could not understand who stood before her. The Empress began to explain with a shriek that because of Lin, her heavenly demon sect was destroyed and her bodies were destroyed. But the girl remembered nothing of the sort. Overflowing with anger, the girl flew toward her abuser. But as she stopped, she shared a rumor that the Empress had passed away, but apparently she had just been reborn. Lin didn't want to confirm anything, so she just talked about how anything could have happened. But the Empress believed these rumors to be true. She now wanted to attack Lin with the certainty that she had lost all her limit power. She wants to take her flesh from her, and she's sure she'll succeed. From his first strike, Lin was able to dodge it. Immediately, she summoned her ice swords. A series of explosions created by the Empress rang out throughout the forest. Without harm to herself, the girl found herself above the trees. But the Empress continues her attacks, and notices that the girl is able to fend off her attacks solely because of her sword. Today is a happy day for her. She will finally have flesh, and she won't be destroyed by Imperial weapons. She asks Lin to surrender, as she doesn't want to hurt her future body. One of Empress Lin's tentacles is cut, and they respond by not taking on too much, as she is an ordinary spirit at the limit of holiness. Also, the rules of the secret limit all the powers of the new arrivals. All monks who possess the limit above Nirvana have been sealed, and she will be no exception. The Empress confirms everything Lin said, but notes that there is a loophole in any of the rules, and the limitless mysteries of the limit are no exception at all. The strong currents of wind created by the woman blew. She began the process of transformation. Lin was shocked by what she saw. She couldn't believe what was in front of her eyes. Indeed, the Empress turned out to be a semi-saint who would soon break the limit of sainthood, and she'll finally have a new body for it. She sharpened Lin again so that she couldn't move. The Empress wonders if Lin knows the strength it takes to be at the secret limit. The strength it takes to break through the limit of the nerve. She exceptionally wants her soul back. Reclaims it, as it turns out, in this place. She didn't want to die. She needed to take revenge on those gods who were still alive. She couldn't end up like that just in that place. Her hatred and anger helped her survive and break through the confines of the secret limit. And right now, she exclusively wants Lin dead. In a stalemate, the girl touches her blackboard and calls out to the teacher. Meanwhile, in the regular world, Qin sensed the fact that the disciple needed him. 3 days before the opening of the limitless Riddell at night, the hero sat on the roof of the castle. Qin gives her student a time and space tag. It is designed so that, and if Lin is in a dangerous situation, the teacher will know about it, and asks her to keep the thing close to her body. And as soon as the girl touches that tag, the hero will climb out through it and come to the aid of the student. The girl agrees and puts it between her breasts. And note that the teacher will have to be very careful getting out of there. As for the present, Lin and sister mentor Sue had already traveled to the boundless secret limit. The hero wants to spend time solely on himself. He walked into a cafe and decided to eat. The heroes were blown away by the smell of the new dish, and just as he began to gorge himself on it, he heard a call for help from a student. Initially, the hero thought he heard a message for help from the time tag. At the same moment, Xiao walked into the same cafe. Empress was asked by Lin if that was really her backup. Just call someone for help. The community is asking to end this useless fight already. Since there is no benefit from her trying not to die, she tossed the tag somewhere far away. But at the same moment, a man appeared in front of them. With all his might, he attacked the enemy creature. The hero wondered if everything was okay, and what had happened here in the first place. He also wondered why Qing wasn't together with Lin. It was hard for the girl to speak, so she decided to show her teacher her memories. Touching his forehead, she began the process of transferring the memories. All the moments of threat and attacks of the Mad Empress of Heavenly Demons appeared in the hero's mind. All the moments of threat and attacks of the Mad Empress of Heavenly Demons arose in the hero's mind. The guy realized that from the beginning, this girl was in league with the old man. All those fights with Xiao were specifically to find a new body. The girl remarks that the monkey mask on the hero looks very silly. Here notices that she's the only reason he was able to get through the mystery of the secret limit. After killing a monster from the secret limit, and with the help of the monster's spirit, you can turn into part of the limit, which is exactly what that woman did. The Empress was shocked by this kind of power. With just one blow, he was able to shatter her soul into pieces. The guy was a spirit monster from the heart of the secret limit Saint Monkey. She got in trouble because the hero hurt her monster. The girl noticed that the teacher appeared very quickly. He started boasting that he was doing what he said he was doing, and in the same unexpected moment, the hero realizes that something alive is underground and it's crawling. Spider Monster crawled out of there screaming that it would kill anyone in its path. Who had lost her human form, she began to continue her attack on the heroes. The teacher immediately orders Lin to get far away from the danger, and also asks you not to worry about yourself, and uses the power of the Holy Monkey to defeat the Spider Monkey. But the enemy's reactions were as if the blows had become quite weak to her. It was all about the enemy's incredibly tough skin. Now it was the monster's turn to attack Chinya with its deadly cry. The guy realizes that dealing with this creature is going to be a lot harder than he originally thought, and it becomes a serious problem. More enemy tentacles began to crawl out of the ground. They're so toxic they burn your clothes. Hero skills help him stay more or less unharmed, and yet he was trapped in the monster's divine web field. And after that, he was cocooned in a spider's web. The monster began to walk up to him and summon the general. Sitting in the bush, the girl didn't know what to do in this situation. But the bright idea of saving the teacher pops into his head. The monster, looking at the result of the fight, laughed and confirmed what he had promised to win. And now it's the turn of her next enemy, as the hero began to burst out of his cocoon. Using his sword, he was able to break free, slicing the trap to pieces. Luckily, Qing Yiling had withdrawn the ice blade so he could use it, shocked at what was happening. The hero now decides to counterattack with his hand mudra power, as well as body-wise and lone diamond-wise. Enumerating further more and more of his strength, he began to head towards the enemy.
The monster tries to grab him again, and more successfully this time.
More and more tentacles from the ground tried to stop the guy, but nothing stopped him from cutting the monster's body in half. In just a moment, he took out his enemy, and ended up finishing his work with a clear conscience and a smile. The remaining pieces of the monster began to dissolve into the wind. The hero hands over the sword and remarks that there is another good thing to do. He decides to inquire about the fruits of the celestial phoenix, of which there are not many. And since the girl found them, they must belong to her alone. He orders her to eat them. By consuming them, the girl's body began to wheel with incomprehensible energy again. The system rewarded the hero again with a new award, this time for the disciple reaching the boundaries of the limit of nirvana. The girl began to realize that after her hermitage at the summit, she had been able to reach the usual limit of creation, although there would still be some things to be decided and accomplished. Lin didn't quite understand the teacher's last words. At the same moment, with the help of a magical chain, the hero was able to catch the one who was hiding under thousands of kilometers of earth. He pulled an familiar old man out of the ground. He remarks that Kunlun's young mentor is indeed one of the best. He could fool everyone into his plans. The hero hands old man Lin over since he hasn't finished his legal noodles yet. The girl didn't realize if the teacher really wanted to just leave right now, but the man reassured her and transferred the rest of the explosive monkey's powers. Thus, in the girl, there was still the strength of the half-saint's limit. So he'll be waiting for Lin at the top of the hidden sword. An old man looking at the whole picture. And standing up, he remarks that her teacher really believes in her since he thinks that a non-entity like her can defeat an experienced half-saint. And they decide to see who's stronger. The old man started swinging his sword towards Lin, but she managed to dodge all the attacks well. The girl began to wonder if her body would become more plastic, and if her blood would become stronger after raising the limit. The old man wonders if the hero hasn't taught any skills to the half-saints. Once she's on the enemy's blade, she realizes she's just remembering everything. But the old man didn't believe it, since possessing half a saint's power. Of that power, she is still exceptionally shortened from attacks, and she's nothing more than a regular girl. She needs to show it all until she falls. But this time, Lin realizes that it's her time to attack as well. And in an instant, the old man began to attack with his strongest attack. The girl just vanished from his sight. At breakneck speed behind him, she had already launched her unbelievable attack. The blow sent him flying off into the rock with all his might. And it was a blow with only the limit of half-saint. The old man was in indescribable shock at the speed and strength the girl possessed. And Lin decides to end this farce now. But the old man objects, saying she's in an advantageous position. And she dares to babble on, and promise to show her now what a half-saint is really like. But the girl explains that she's killed innumerable half-saints, and again using her power sent him into the rock once more. Sister Lin had already been searched for a long time by 3 people from the same sect, and then they find her in the woods. Qing ran up to her. She told her that she was worried sick that something had happened to Lin, and was afraid that she might have died, wondered what the girl had stumbled upon. She explained that from the moment she jumped into the whirlpool, a pile of red gems had suddenly appeared on her hand. Meanwhile, back at the noodle cafe, Qin returned to the noodle shop. He was already overjoyed to be able to eat it again. But there was no chair with a table and no noodles. The noodles were on the floor. A nightmare was taking place in the city. The guards were being killed one by unknown men. The princess, hoping to escape, was disappointed that a man had appeared in front of her. He asked her to just surrender to them, or else all her underbelly will be killed and their blood will be on her hands. The girl was in a desperate situation. At the same moment, on the second floor of the cafe, Qing was getting upset over the unfinished food. The girl turned to the guy in hopes that he could help her. But the enemy said it was the work of an evil cult, and that the hero should mind his own business. Qin was dissatisfied with the fact that the man was constantly yelling and preventing him from hearing what the heavens would tell him in response, and at the same instant summons the dragon's claws on the enemy. Now there's a huge crater in the city street. The Tsarina was pleasantly surprised by this development. She began to thank the hero for what he had done, and invited him to her palace to determine the payment for his work. But he said no because he had other things to do. The girl was upset that her savior had just walked away, but luckily, she's managed to record his image. She's ordered to find him, and then she'll find out what family he's from. Meanwhile, while Chin was flying, he thought about the time left until Lin's return, and decided to return home. The perimeter of the building was covered by an opaque balloon. The hero did not understand why his house was stamped with the limits of sanctity. Inside, there was no sign of habitation of the house. The building had been abandoned for half a month. The hero who got inside slipped on one of the slabs. It flew out of its place, and the hero began to suppose it was one of the traps of something that looked like a puppet of people emerged from the empty space. It turned out to be a recording of my parents. They left with the servants and asked them not to worry about them and to be careful with the books. Chin wasn't quite sure which books he needed to be careful with. From the forest walks the main character with a sack. Listed the name of animals on the way home. Today he's sure he's got good luck, so he decides to check into the system by pressing the coveted button in the interface. He got a reward for attending, namely an increase in learned knocks and a Super Step Junior Mentor. The same object came out of thin air and just fell to the ground. The hero was far from happy about the fact that he had been marking 7,000 days to get some kind of orb. Just then a forest leapt into the air beside him, but she couldn't continue to exist freely. The orb took her over. Chin was surprised by this kind of thing. He realized that the Pokeball in front of him was indeed a Pokeball. The orb was making some kind of ticking sound, and the guy didn't realize how long it would last. When a man appeared behind the protagonist's back, he told the guy to get out and let us know the box of valuables is his. The hero couldn't believe it. Is it really the most legendary Cesarevna box? It wasn't much like that. The man, when he saw the protagonist's face, was surprised at his beauty. He started to convince him that it was 100% the Cesarevna. The Imperial Union is after her, so it's better that she's in his hands. Also offers to take Chinya to a secluded place where they can have fun improving together. An old but powerful song came to mind. Pretty much reminded the hero of the situation right now. With a shout in his voice, the hero explained that he wasn't going anywhere, in a rather aggressive manner. The words Chin said made the man fall into tears. The man decides to destroy the hero, so that he will never say such words to him again. He was able to cause a small earthquake with just one blow. And though the hero was able to dodge, he recognized the enemy's tremendous strength. The man asked me not to dodge anymore and to give him the box. He called the man a faggot again and stood by the fact that the box was all his. He was filled with rage that the hero had called him that again. His ability throughout the forest caused trees to fall to the ground in various chunks. When the sun switched with the moon, the hero was sitting on one of the remaining trees in the forest. The box did squeak all day, just as the hero had envisioned, unfortunately. And the minute she didn't commandeer the box, it stopped making the annoying sound. It was finally over, the hero assumed. The man had already exchanged anger for his usual fatigue almost all day. He had wanted to find and destroy Kinya. He says he'll never see him again, even though the man asked him not to run away. On his way home, the protagonist wondered if he could eat that glorious fox. Already at the peak of the hidden sword, the sun was setting. That same fox woke up in one of the temple's bedrooms. She didn't understand where she didn't realize it wasn't like the Imperial Alliance. She began to wonder if someone had rescued her. There was a hero sitting at the table and he said she was finally awake. The fox couldn't tell who was in front of her. Shin replied that it was the Kunlun sect, and he himself was the benefactor who had saved her. But she couldn't believe it. She thought the case had the limit of the living spirit. He couldn't beat a man with the limit of holiness. The hero replied that it was necessary not to believe him. But that man he had turned into a firecracker. The fox decided to jump out of the window near the bed, in order to save himself in this way, but the same box caught it and kept it from running away. The fox asked not to sign the contract because she urgently needed to leave here. But the hero couldn't do that, because if he didn't sign an elementary contract with her, she would die. And in fact, you have to write a full contract within 3 days or she'll die too. But the vixen mostly didn't care if she died or not. Kin was surprised she couldn't look into the sea of knowledge. Still, she might try to call out from her sea of contact information. When the fox heard about her sea of knowledge, she wasn't too pleased. She wondered if she had no other way out. She was the victim of a conspiracy. If she sat still, she would die. Chin was not afraid of the consequences, and the fox herself could exclusively sign the contract. She realized she'd met an idiot, and the only way out was to steal his box and run away with it. She has offered to sign a contract for 100 years, or until the limit of the fox surpasses Chinya. heard this face immediately became very happy because, and a little effort, and she will happen his limit. Foxy decides to sign the contract. With their foreheads touching, the signing process took place. The system congratulated the host on the new signing of the service contract. He was rewarded for it. The fox decides to improve himself from this day on. One of her problems is the serious wounds she's left behind. The hero's point is that she needs to recover really fast. The hero is about to arrive and orders her to eat while he's away, calling her doggy, which she was very unhappy about. In response, she decided not to eat, but after a while, the sound of hunger began to be heard in her stomach, and she decides to eat anyway, but only to toughen up. Taking the Demon King's first piece of meat into her mouth, she was in indescribable joy. She decides to eat all the Demon King's meat off the table so she won't be at her limit. Sometime later in a bamboo grove near the springs, the hero tried to buy up the forest with him, but it refused to do so. The block the fox was holding onto broke and it flew into the water, diving headfirst into it. It wasn't even noticeable when some girl comes out of the water saying the main character's a scoundrel. She was directly angered that he apparently doesn't understand human speech. She had a very pretty face. Well, the protagonist was more interested in some other part of her body. The character notes that to think she is such a beautiful fox with such a good figure. As soon as he heard about the figure, the girl started wondering what he was talking about. She jumped into the water to hide from the hero, but he said he planned to give the pearls to her, but without even looking at him. Called him a pervert and said he didn't want any pearls. As she looked at it, she realized that it was a heavenly fox pearl. Heavenly demons used to concert all their chi powers into such pearls before they died. From its origin, the pearl had the name of its owner. The girl couldn't believe what an elite imperial artifact in this guy's hands was. She asked if the hero would give her this pearl. He confirmed, on one condition. She wanted to know what the terms were, but if some stupid one, she wasn't going to fulfill it. The hero wanted the fox to kiss him. She didn't want to give up her first kiss in exchange for an imperial artifact. Feet in general says that he wanted to give away the technique along with the pearl. He pulled out 2 books. Assista laughed and thought it was the august secret of the celestial vixen. She said her technique is at the very top of the imperial stage, so some others, and they are needed, agree with what she says but ask them to read what is written on the books first. At the same moment, he threw one of them at her. With quite a bit of skepticism, she began to read the contents, even though she kept in her head the thought that nothing would be better than her skill. While she was reading, the hero was very much filled with boredom. She came to the conclusion that indeed with this technique, one can reach the heights of a celestial vixen. In the entire history of her family, only one vixen had such power. If she possessed such power, her revenge against the Imperial Alliance would be very swift. She decided to ask Cineas if he would really give her away. Turning her show head towards him, she didn't notice him. It appeared that he had already poured wine for himself, and also confirmed that he would give her everything in return for a favor. The hero liked the wine he poured very much, yet he inquired of the fox about the fox's willingness to do so. She hesitated for a moment, thinking about what to say, and she actually agrees to a kiss, since the reward will be so great. The guy who heard that started putting his lips in the air, and the girl also started doing the same thing. Little by little, they were already starting to approach each other. Just a moment, and their contact would have happened, but stopped a sword that flew past them. He was almost at the feet of the heroes, just a couple of centimeters, and he would have been without them. The vixen couldn't understand what had happened or who their enemy was. Upon returning, Lin was very dissatisfied with the fact that she had no rest after the secret limit. She wanted to teach the lecherous teacher a lesson, even though he wanted to explain it to her. It had no effect on her, and she used her ice power. In one of the beautiful bodies of water, a fox was sitting on a rock in full immersion in meditation. It took her 5 years to restore the half-light limit of this. Her name is actually Bai, and she is the princess of Qingqiu. The only thing that bothered her was why the contract hadn't been cancelled yet. With contentment, she came to the hero. Qin and Lig were having lunch. The hero was rewarded for his ward recovering to the point of being half empty. But to answer the question, the fox could not. Bai accused the guy of being a cheat and a scoundrel because of what he'd done. Meanwhile, in the dark lands covered with darkness and terror, a lone eagle flew by. Between the sounds of thunder in the heavens, a group of beings could be heard talking. The 3 demon emperors wanted to tell the demonic holiness that they had found the ancient blood of the Ice Phoenix. It didn't work because the defendant was wearing a man with impressive powers. After a battle with him, they've been repairing their wounds until today. The leader was interested in such information. He wanted to know where the blood was, and he found out that it was in Kunlun. He had a disdainful attitude towards the 3 immortal sects. They gutted him, and he can't recover until today. He orders him to gather an army, and in 15 hours together with him to destroy Kunlun Jian. All sorts of monsters began to gather to destroy all humanity. The head began to tell the elder that the demonic saint with Declore wanted to destroy the sect. In response, he ordered not to panic and to unite with all the remaining sects first and leave the rest to him, to which the head agreed. Meanwhile, Lin and Bao were practicing with the ball, and their mentor was sorting out the awards in the system. 3 days after the news of the bloodshed, led by all the demon emperors, they were on their way to kill all the humans they met along the way. In response, adherents of every sect imaginable have banded together to fight back. Everyone fought to the best of their abilities in the field. Even the girl we know is being attacked by soulless devils. The chapter was beginning to worry about Sulan, but the voice of one of the demon emperors recommended that we stay focused on the fight. Su was in indescribable fear of what was happening before her eyes. More and more people were dying. How the explosion destroyed all of her fetters. Her savior was Lin, who wanted to solve her misfortune. The demon empress was overjoyed that the blood of the ice phoenix had finally shown up. Link has asked the head of the Su to rest, as she will deal with the empress on her own. Qin and Bao watched the whole nightmare from the sidelines. She didn't realize if the hero would really just watch and do nothing. The duel between the Empress and Lin was in full swing. It was devastating because none of them were going to die. They managed to trade blows with each other, but no one took the lead. The Empress was annoyed that a wretched man had dared to spoil her beautiful face with one blow of hers. She promises to break every limb of the girl without regret. The girl realized more and more that with each passing second her strength was being lost more rapidly, and even she couldn't dodge one of the enemy. Better from the start, one powerful blow followed by another even more powerful one. The Empress has taken the so-called 9 wings to a whole new level. She didn't stop and delivered blow after blow, each one brimming with anger and bloodlust. Everyone was worried about the girl's life. Could Lin have died? Bao was indescribably angry that the hero was just sitting there watching, and she already wanted to go to her little sister's rescue, but Qin make it clear that it's okay to rush into things. The hero realized that the strength of the half-sainthood he'd left for Lin was still enough. Lin was still perfectly capable of dodging all of the enemy's lunges. She decided to use the last of her strength to end it all. The Empress felt something terrifying overwhelming her from within. Lin disappeared from her sight as if she had never existed, when suddenly a girl appeared in front of her with a sword in her hands. The next instant, there was a tremendous explosion of indescribable magnitude. Lin didn't fully understand what was going on since she hadn't even had time to hit her enemy in a meaningful way. It turns out that a demonic saint has come to the Empress's rescue, which she was overjoyed about. He blamed the blood of the Ice Phoenix for stepping into his holy domain. Now she would become a victim. Just then, the High Demon's arm was pierced by swords from different directions. 3 elders from different sects gathered together to prevent evil from winning this time, asked the girl to retreat and leave it to them. Meanwhile, in the storeroom atop the hidden sword, the hero decided to go back for his stuff because he had a feeling he could be involved. Elder began attacking the golden dragon with the strongest they had. The 2-handed generational sword should have destroyed him in one blow. The demon said that this trick is 300 years old, and in hopes of a successful counterattack, uses the breath of destruction. The attack paid off. Each of the elders was defeated by a huge explosion. A certain voice began to be heard. Someone gave a pretty good assessment of the fight, and touching the ball the elder summoned broke it into pieces. The elders were able to destroy the villain's armor, but still not enough periods of fire to fully defeat him. With the help of his august limit, he wanted to capture Lin. It was noticed at once by the head, though she fought. But she called out to the girls. The threat came closer and closer to the heroine. At the same moment, the talisman glowed. A hero's hand came out of it. Qin fended off the demon's attack. A real hero appeared on the stage. No one could figure out who he was. The hero noticed that Lin was not at all happy to see him. Turns out, the appearance itself isn't exactly pleasant, and it would be nice for the girl to initially know about it. The target noticed that she was calling out to him, so her sword came to her rescue. Demon was in incomprehension whether anyone will still protect Kunlun. Today, he will destroy all sects. No one will stop him. Decides not to hesitate and attack first, but Qin's dash was able to block the attack. It's so hard to cut the villain's skin. What was his surprise? The hero notes that when people see him, they fall in love. Find the coffin lid. Saw the sword of death August. Tikam the enemy was outraged. In his opinion, there was no need to make a circus of it. And what August Ball could kill him. In response to this case, still asks him to try and absorb his sword. Demon decides to use it on his feet and strengthen his skin. But even with the magic armor, the magic started to crack under the pressure of the hero. Strengthening the skin didn't stop the magic in Price It, and went on, destroying the demon's arm. and soon sent it into the nearest cliff at unimaginable speed. The hero with the bag over his head realizes the fight is over, and his part of the case is officially over. Meanwhile, one of the demon emperors was captured. Was wondering if Lin was okay, to which she responded positively, and assumed it was over. The cornerbacks had a couple questions about the emergence of this savior who dealt with the demon with a single punch. The girl explains that it's the receiver of Zhang's mentor, and he came to their rescue, which the woman believed. If it wasn't for him, this battle would have ended a lot faster, and the girl was surprised that the head believed this nonsense. Meanwhile, the wounded demon king was assessing his situation. He realizes he underestimated Kunlun. His hand begins the rebuilding process. In the blink of an eye, the new hand was in place of the old one. He began to sense the dragon's secret technique, which speaks to that transformation into a higher dragon. All the people around were surprised by such powerful breathing. They couldn't understand what had happened.
The fully recovered Demon King laughingly announced himself again.
He claimed to have defeated death. They had congratulated his opponent, and now he has no opponents in the August limit. Aylin's head was worried. They noticed that he had gotten stronger, and the likelihood of him winning had increased dramatically. And with the ancient blood of the Ice Phoenix, he can become the new Demon Emperor and will be up against thousands of... And he's wondering how the Kunlun sect wants to die. But one of the ends is falling off. He was in shock. His head was separated from his body. He didn't realize what had happened. It's so hard to break through the third heaven and still is good at judging the enemy's punch and intent. But his flaw was that he talked too much. Then, the two remaining Demon Emperors were captured, and Qin was contemplating the body of the dead enemy, and decides to pour him a golden dragon corpse from the limit of holiness. Pretty good stuff. He tells the girl he'll go first, but she calls for him to go as well, but with a smile on his face. The hero remarks that Lin should wait. She was scared because of her mentor's attitude. Immediately, it came back via delivery. The girl wasn't too pleased that the guy was saying it again, chapter wondering if the sage with the sword had left. But Lin didn't know who she meant, and the woman explained that the man who had helped them. She didn't have time to thank him. I was also surprised that the girl's breasts were bigger again, and smoky. Meanwhile, the disguised hero poured everything into one giant vat. There was a foxy bow fox resting outside. She was insanely bored by the fact that Qin had already been in the immortality pill creation room for half a day already, and she assumed the birds too, that were near her. Had nothing to do, like here. As she waited, she wondered. Made her eyes open by a voice that addressed the girl. Lin wondered why the vixen had fallen asleep, and where their mentor was now. Xiao was insanely happy to see the girl, and told her that Qin was busy melting pills. Lin had a bad feeling about it. Just then a deadly explosion rang out atop the hidden sword. The fox screamed at being attacked on the summit. And here the girl realized that once again the teacher's pill had gone off again. In a puff of smoke, the girls start looking for their mentor. Lin asks to dispel the smoke, and the vixen has no problem doing it, all in one fell swoop. You can see much better after that. And then a joyous hero emerged from the rubble. He succeeded in creating the right item. The system congratulates him, already when the sun has given its place to the moon. In one of the rooms of the palace, two girls were changing clothes.
They marveled at such strange clothing.
But Lin swept it up. It was a little better than the last one the teacher had purchased, so it's a pretty good one. The only confusing thing is that it's pretty narrow, but the hero pointed out that the girls would have to get used to it. Announcing himself, Qin wondered if Lin and Xiao were ready, and announces that the Night of Excellence begins right now. The girls weren't happy with the appearance of a hero, and with a shout they asked him to leave, near a local water source. There were girls lying in wait, who didn't know what to expect from the teacher. Pressing a special point, he speaks the desired words. Continuing his signature massage, he takes on Lin's body, which she wasn't too happy about, and he continues to implement different techniques on the girls. And the point of Yao Yangguan is beginning to manifest. Her whole body is stiffened, and he decides to go for the grand gesture. And he does it to two people at once. The girls found themselves in a state completely beyond their comprehension. But it begs the question, why did this happen in the first place? Sounds of dissent could be heard in the house. The hero didn't understand why the girls wouldn't go for it. It seemed to them that the so-called healthy massage was invented by him, to be able to touch them. But Qin remarks that with their current improvement, they don't have any better way of getting to be. He asked Xiao if she couldn't really be better than him, and be free like she used to be. And Lin wanted to improve as quickly as possible. So this is a chance to do that. The girls looked at each other, and thought about what the teacher had said. Vixen has noticed that if Qin does any prank, she would kill him, and still decides to give it a try. And here in the bamboo thicket, to the sound of the pond, the girls were suffering from their mentor's massage and asked to be a little more gentle and do things a little slower. The hero himself was getting pretty tired by now. It was the turn of the last reception, and as soon as he wanted to use the divine finger, the girls panicked at this and forbade him to continue. The teacher announced that this work was over, but the girls were not satisfied. Vixen was sure he was playing a trick on her, but he expressed his displeasure that they might insult his dignity, but not the skills. And now it's time to witness a true miracle. But then the girls started beating up Chinya. But here's an afterthought. They actually saw that the rate of Kwai transformation had become much faster than before, and the hero replied that he never cheats. The system notifies that Miao Ling has broken through to the great half-saint limit. And for that, the hero is rewarded, and Xiao accepted her mistake. She really was wrong to scold her teacher. But then Lin came up to her with a smile and offered her something. After a time, when the teacher was alone at the source, two girls came up to him at once, closed his eyes. What he didn't understand and was afraid of what they might do. And there was the sound of a kiss. Just a few days later, after a battle with an army of demons, in one of the bedrooms slept the 10th dream of the main character, and on the other bed, cuddled up together, Lin and Foxy slept together. Next to this place, the rooster began to prepare for his beautiful performance, one that would wake everyone up. But then he was interrupted by a human cry. The man asked for help from benefactor Kinya. The boy was puzzled as to who could have come to him so early in the day. The same noise woke up the girls. Xiao wondered what had happened, and Lin explained that the teacher had come to see her. Without stopping, someone called out to Chinya. The girl clearly wanted to see the hero very badly, and he is already ready. Comes up to her and asks her to stop screaming. The girl was glad to actually see the character. Lin wondered if the teacher knew her, and he talks about a situation that happened some time ago. And the question remained as to what the girl wanted this time from Chinya. She tearfully asks the hero to save her from trouble again. The girl knelt down and begged to be taken as an apprentice. Her younger brother has taken the throne and wants to marry her because of thoughts of succession. In his opinion, she should join the harem, and the kingdoms of Zhou and Chunming will become brothers. Everyone was disgusted with the way they looked at and judged her, which she couldn't help but be disgusted by. And if she doesn't have power, she'll have to get married. She wants to learn and control her own destiny. The hero thought about everything the girl had told him. A girl can become the hero's apprentice on one condition, and this condition is the color of Chunming, the national flower of her kingdom. He must have it. The flower itself grows very slowly. Usually one flower is given per new king. It can be used to break through the limit. She can't agree to that. The hero decides to keep it simple. She gives him a flower. He makes her heir to the throne, to which everyone was shocked. After saying that, the girl hesitated for a moment, and after a moment, she decided to agree to Master Chinya's terms. The hero was happy about this development. He asked to go with him. After a while, in the same forest, there was a call for help. It turned out to be Min. The hero didn't understand what had found the girl, and why she was running away, but the girl thinks that if she stops, she'll die right away. The mentor didn't understand why the student had such an expression on her face, why he could see the tears. She's sure that her learning skill is 0, and she's not going to be the heir. Just as the run comes to an abrupt end, then she falls to the ground, and he's asking her to let go. Chiba notices that tears won't help her get stronger. She needs to stop running away and start fighting. But the girl refuses to the last. She is sure that she will die the most horrible death if she doesn't run away. For all this, watching Lin and Fox pondered whether this kind of training would be effective or not. In one of the castles under the crescent moon, a girl's panicked voice can be heard from one room. On the bed, the girl was being strangled by a man. She kept saying, "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Mingguan Chunming King claimed that the girl didn't blame him. It wasn't his fault. It was his sister and father. In her last breath, the girl tearfully asked for help for the last time, and after a moment, any attempt to preserve life came to a halt. The Tsarevich responded to the elder's request. Now he will be able to fulfill the promise he made to him. In another part of the room, a window swung open with all its might. Some kind of dark magic has entered the room through him. The lad appeared, addressed the man, first as the kingsman, and soon as the king. If he has fulfilled his part of the bargain, then the elder will surely fulfill his. Mo Tian, the head of the demonic sect, promises to help the hero achieve the throne of the king. It's afternoon. It was fashionable to hear someone's joy. Foxy said that since it's fashionable to use magic in battle, you don't have to say she's hurting anyone. Lin retracts the foxfire fired by the girl. Yi orders and Lian to attack. The fox wasn't happy that it was 2-on-1, and after gaining strength, the princess decides to use a sacrificial attack, which the vixen certainly didn't expect, and decides to use the crown's trick to save the fox's life. But Lian herself was injured. A girl can't use her. The duel is still going on, and the hero is watching. He catches himself thinking that everything looks like a Pokemon battle, and the fox decides to recognize the situation and asks them to rest. Lin noticed that Miao Lin had only been studying with her teacher for a couple of days, but she's grown a lot. She also wonders if she's behaving exactly the same way she did the first time around, but the girl empathized when she remembered that. She's definitely not very likely to do it again. But the vixen notices that at least she's not hiding anymore.
And he also notices that the princess's stomach is quivering.
It turns out to be Chunming's means of communication. Dad gave her one because he was worried. He wants to contact her remotely. In the same second, a hologram emerged from the object. It had Yilian's father's face on it in very poor quality. He asked the girl not to come back yet, as it was dangerous here. But then a certain hand went through my father's body. Horror and fear overwhelmed all the girls who saw it. The girl was shocked by this. Now she hopes everything is okay. She asked for her father's response to give him signs of life. The man explains that the royal father is now dead, and she's the one who ruined him. The girl didn't understand why her brother had done it, or why it had happened that way. And the man explains that he first became the new heir apparent after the girl left the creator for the teacher of the hidden sword, and her father wanted to make her his heir. So he had to kill her father. The girl was just overflowing with anger, and Foxy tried to calm her down. But my brother wants to make it clear right away that she only has herself to blame, not him. He's just recommending that it's better to get married quietly. Just then, the head of the Dark Collegium appeared, and according to their conversation, there will now be a sacrifice in the capital, and the new Czar had no problem with that. He called that guy an honorable official. Now that town is filled with blacks, just like they wanted it to be. Hearing Lin's voice, she began to recognize very familiar notes. Yi Lian was in a mad rage. She didn't understand how her brother dared to collude with Head Mo, but all he did in response was destroy a tool for communication. The girl asked to come back immediately. She didn't understand what they wanted to do to the common people of Chunming. Foxy tried to calm Lian down, but the latter explains that she's worried about the common people of Chunming, to save the common people and the town. But to do that, we need the help of a teacher. And Liang wonders if he can help, if there's still hope. And the guy who was just eating watermelon was thinking how annoying girls are. There was an insanely big ruckus in town. People were trying to run faster and faster. But immediately, one of them is caught by something monstrous. Some kind of tentacles grabbed each of the refugees from the city. They were swallowed up in a puddle of some kind of red color, like blood. They were asking for someone to come to their aid, and it seemed to be because of the head of the Dark Brotherhood. If he can break through when he finishes the sacrifice at the Chunming capital city, a certain being congratulates Mo for making it to the level of sainthood. And holding in his hands a certain book, it continues that now, as he wished to, his skills and their creations will become even more deeply intertwined. At one point in the royal palace of Chunming, the heroes flew in. After swinging open the doors, the girl immediately demanded for Ming Guangjiang to come out towards her. But what she saw in front of her made her heart stop for a moment. On the throne sat some creature cloaked in shadows. It turned out that 3 princes at once were unknowingly joined into one monstrous body at once. All who saw it were filled with fear from their fingertips. Immediately, my sister started calling out names, people she saw in that monster. And then Mo showed up and shared his joy that the princess had finally returned. And a certain creature remarked that he hadn't seen Qin Tian for a long time. The hero began to ponder and question what she had done. The head of the Dark Brotherhood swept up that now he had just contrived to make the new king even stronger. He was able to use his newfound powers to unite all the brothers into a whole. The fact that the girl had gone to the top of the hidden sword behind the teacher. The angry girl decides to strike at the target, but she was stopped by a barrier that had suddenly appeared, which she was madly unhappy about. And then the hero decided to ask who the bald guy with the book was, and he reminded me that he had presented himself before. And to call him a position. How do magic spells come out of an open book here? And the whole room was reminded by the bright light. And then it turns out that from the palace itself, all the people disappeared without a trace. Turns out there was a move to the desert, from which the girls were both surprised and displeased. Then the voice of the brothers was heard, and the enemy was astonished at having met his saint again. And with Lin, they exchanged words about how they wanted each other to kill you. Lin madly wants to cut the enemy into 1,000 small pieces. One of the skinhead drill decided to introduce himself. His name is Wenna, and the living book presented itself as one of the 9 divine books. But this creature's body is related to the Qin family in the omnibenevolent universe. The hero understood nothing of what he heard from the paper. From that, both clever enemies were quite prostrate. Just then, a bright thought and an unexpected memory popped into Chinya's mind. Then 2 strange dolls talking about some incomprehensible nonsense for the heroes. Then the parents would announce that they were away with the servants. And the hero needs to be careful with the book. At the time, he didn't understand at all what they were talking about. It turns out this is the same book that Mother Chinya was talking about. He thought he'd have to learn something again. Turns out the hero's parents hid a lot. We'll have to ask them about it. The guy wonders what the Qin family did after all. The book decides to start from the beginning. It begins its story with the whole of the celestial universe. After the infinite explosion of the void, an entire universe was born. To avoid the collapse of an uncontrolled universe, the Book of 9 deities came into existence. The function of each of them was to maintain order and stabilize her.
But sometimes people like Qin or his parents show up in different periods.
They destroy order little by little, bringing the universe to its doom. So they must be destroyed. And it takes tremendous strength to do that. And it takes a bald guy and a book to combine their abilities to do that. They need to destroy all threats to save everything in this world. And Qin thought about the fact that before his eyes, the book had now turned into a cape. And he was insanely happy about it. He wanted such magic in his collection. The enemy decided to launch his attack first, using one of his strongest techniques. The hero was not confused, and decided to break all the armor, no matter how sad this would make him feel. And their fists, shrouded in magic, began to converge. From such a thing, an insane power of destruction flowed from them. After a moment, the two pushed away from each other. The aggressor realized that the hero was at the limit of the living spirit. Although he is a variable, Qin hid self-cultivation. He couldn't believe the guy was on the same level as him. The hero was pleased to hear such a thing, but unfortunately flattery wouldn't make him happy. Book was maddeningly annoyed by the fact that Qin couldn't just die. He has the death of the Kingsman on his hand. He is a threat to the entire universe. But the guy doesn't believe in the words of the living book. He doesn't take her word for it. Then you would need to use the magical power of the Book of Deities to destroy it. And the enemy decides that Chinya won't be able to say she and will be killed. And with a mad dip of energy, he goes forward, starting to break through. The hero, seeing this before his eyes, was completely shocked at such a... Never before had he seen the limit of divinity. In one hero's moment, the enemy manages to deal him an insanely powerful blow. And waiting for time until the next moment, he didn't, and is already striking again. From the impact, the hero flies into a body of water at breakneck speed. Wen finally stopped after such a thing, and he was sure he was done. Meanwhile, an explosion erupted in another part of the desert. The creature claimed, though the princess had spent a great deal of time, she had learned absolutely nothing at all. He's just asking her to accept her death. The girl has a problem because of the enemy's attack speed. That's why you can't get any closer. But then Xiao, who wanted to protect her friend, showed up behind the enemy. But then she noticed something she was shocked by. In the flesh of the monster, one could see the living face of a man. How are the other voices here, wondering if anyone wants to give up? And he started to exude some kind of energy. A beam of magic went at the girl with all speed. She tried to hold it back. The force of this attack threw the vixen far away from the enemy. The princess was concerned about the fate of her savior. The work of the royal father was very much appreciated by the other heads. But then the father started shouting for Yilian to run from here with all her legs. She must live and continue their lineage. Their dynasty. He heard a familiar timbre in the voice that said it, and realizing that her royal father was speaking to her at this moment, the tears came on their own, and he kept asking the girl to run away from here, and was only annoyed at the fact that the girl had come back here. In the flashback, shows how Yilian was found as a child, even though she was hiding away. Her brother was able to scare his little sister with the help of a mask. He apologized for scaring her. The father tried to convince his daughter that there was definitely no need to worry. She may be a princess, but she's such a coward. But that's okay. Her royal father promises to protect her. That memory lodged itself in the girl's heart, and she felt exactly the same feeling right now. But the general consensus of the creature was that the old man talked too much during the bloody war. His father orders Leon to leave the palace as well, only to return when he has finished the battle. Though she wanted to object to such an order, she could not refuse the king's words. He once again, clearly and in a very loud shout, told her to leave. And now, with great pain, he wants the girl to do exactly the same thing. But she's not going anywhere this time, unlike in the past. It's her decision. And then the single being began to overflow with some kind of magical energy. The brothers talk about the sister not fighting back anymore, but with a heart full of courage, Yi Lian decides to protect her royal father as he did for her. Now it's her turn to defend. Wen looked out for the body of water in which the hero was to drown, and then he notices some interesting movement in the ocean. A beautiful dolphin made up of water jumped out of the water at an insane speed. He was able to knock down a bald enemy, and then it turned out that Qin was already here. It was as if nothing had happened at all. If he wasn't a head taller, he really would have died. But unfortunately for Wenya, he's here, and now it's his turn to attack. And using his power, he drew the sword of life and death. But the enemy swept that even with such an August level weapon. The boy is no match for his level, but Qin remarks that one should try it first, and then judge yes or no, and with a jerk decides to use the dead silence skill. Wen is confident in his defense, which he got with the divine level limit, and it's a defense the hero can't shatter. But immediately the book cooled Wenya's ardor, as it ordered him to dodge this attack. Immediately, the entire layer of magical armor was shattered in a single blow, and the hero wondered for what reason at all the guy had decided that Wingya had an August weapon in his hands. Wen was in the deepest surprise at this development. And the book, which had also taken damage, began to second-guess itself, and the hero ends the order of the dead silence skill. Opponent starts just developing downwind to dust. And boy, does the guy pick up on the fact that this is the first opponent to use all of his monstrous power in the first encounter. He needs to get a lot stronger, he needs to train for that. Skills need to be at a high level, not just weapons, all bets are off. Heroes from the system began to receive alerts for various achievements. Meanwhile, in the wilderness of the area, on the peepee lay an injured foxy showgirl, and the creature began to strangle Yi Lian with all its might. Showing the difference in their strength, the heir to the Chunming must be the strongest, and not to be able to withstand a single blow. The girl still thought most of her father and his fate. He didn't understand why his father had given the reins and throne to Yi Lian, although he's much better suited, and an easy way to just kill an heiress who isn't worthy. But then Shao comes up from the sand with a huge damage, but he gets up, but through the blood was able to see the picture that was happening to Yi Lian, and decides to use his. In the other part, Mo said it was just him and Lin, and this time she's not running away from him, and no one's coming to help. But now the girl has the strength to set her opponent back, and begins to unleash her inner strength, and feeling the insane power of half-holiness, he began to panic at such a... Immediately, the Lin decides to attack the main enemy, with all his strength. But the only problem is that Mo himself is already at the point of total holiness. And then living dragon statues began to crawl out of the ground, and one of them started to attack Lin, but she didn't hesitate. And it was no trouble for her to cut them down with her sword. And that's when she started to release full force. And here now Mo had already summoned a kind of red orb. There was a huge explosion of indescribable energy. An entire beam of energy struck the ground where the representative of the Dark Collegium was. A sort of energy avatar of Mo has emerged, all red. It showed all the indescribable power of its owner in a holy limit. He argued that there was no point in resisting. She should accept what was happening and go with him to join the demonic sect. And then the magical avatar begins to gather energy for its attack, and sends a magical giant ball towards Lin, but she manages to just cut it into two halves. The girl realized that Mo was in the limit of holiness purely for the sake of appearances. He claimed that such arrogance would not stop him. Lin responds by saying that he'll determine whether she's arrogant or not. But in his opinion, she was talking complete nonsense, and immediately launches his next attack, an energy beam. It goes all the way through the girl. Mo expected that this time, Lin would have already fallen to the sand. But what he saw in front of him only shocked him. She was completely unharmed, as if nothing had happened. He couldn't believe it. He was looking for a catch in it. Just then, the heroine's sword began to slice through the head of the enemy's magical avatar, and having traveled the paths to cut it in two, there was an indescribable explosion, and Xiao finally made it. Energy was able to recreate the huge face of an entire fox. The creature was in indescribable astonishment, and realized what danger they were in. And as she finishes her invocation, she says in a full voice, "Confinement," and an insanely powerful force fell upon the enemy. And Lian was finally saved. Her breathing was not hindered by anything. Xiao, who was on her feet, turned to her. It spelled out that this was a chance to destroy him. The vixen would succeed in locking him up, and the rest on his hands and Liang's. And indeed, the monster could not move, and demanded to be released. So the girl decides to get her own way, recalls practicing with her teacher and how she wanted to run away from all the threats far away, from which Chin was not happy. The master argued that everything had to be met directly, but then the girl couldn't do it. But now, it realized that before, she had been exclusively running away, but this time she's going to stand her ground until the end. The monster was annoyed by his sister's decision but couldn't believe it. It reminded her that her brothers were inside it. And then there's the royal father himself. He didn't believe that she could do it, but it was wrong. The girl used all her power to go through the enemy's bodies. He couldn't believe it, that his life would end right here, right now, in this place, and more than half the body is gone. And in her thoughts, she said goodbye to the royal father. Until the next time. Meanwhile, the fight between the remaining one is not over yet. Mo didn't understand the reason why Lin's half-holiness was stronger than his holiness. But Lin has noticed that he gets stronger with the help of sacrifices. So a normal perfector at the half-holy limit would be at his level. But the angry Mo couldn't accept this fact, asking Lin's mouth to shut with a shout. He thinks he can still fit her tripods, and will pass the limit of divinity. And he will become the first celestial demon emperor. But the girl was not at all bothered by the enemy's attack. It went through the enemy's body faster than he did. And at the same moment, half of Mo disconnected from the other one. And with his last breath, he repeated about his plans for the divine limit. Lin decided to reassure him that now he would not be alone on this journey. And having raised the sword above his head, she uttered that all the members of the demonic sect would follow him, and ended this fight. And then some kind of crack in space appeared in the sky. Xiao realized that the creation space after all the dueling began to collapse, and Lian immediately began to panic from this fact. The parents' dolls were in the water. The father is talking about how happy he is to see his son. It's been a long time since they've seen their son, and they say that if he met the dolls, he came across the Book of Deities, and in the process, he solved this headache, and also that the dolls will help gather the power of all the books. The hero was surprised that the book was healthy. The mother doll said she understands her son and promises to explain everything when she meets him. But right now, he should be focusing on improving his skills. Kneeling down, the hero took the book in his hand, though it was strange for him to do so. He looked at the inscription. It said, Defense of the Void. And the guy decides to go to the divine limit and then meet his parents. Meanwhile, already in the nation's capital, an insane number of people had gathered. They all came here to greet the queen and Master Tan. Everyone welcomed the new queen and wished her eternal glory. Queen Chunming asked everyone to rise, and then she looked high into the sky, and she noticed some kind of flying object. Lian turned to the teacher and her sisters. She realized she couldn't get back on top of the hidden ball with them, which was pretty upsetting, but the girls were not upset. They didn't understand their little sister's situation. They tried to comfort her and promised to come to Chunming to walk with her if they could. The girl was touched by such words, but she also felt pressed by the bodies of the others, and the hero's promise that he would help her in any situation. If anyone hurt her, let her turn to either him or the top of the hidden sword would forever be her home. She was surprised at such words. At first, she didn't even believe them. It was all a memory of the last conversation with her friends. Now they fly away, she remains as queen. During the flight, Lin asked, and since they have already taken the flower can, they go somewhere else. With a laugh, the master confirms it. The girls will help restore the royal palace and land, while Master himself rests. And though he's already fantasizing about vacationing with girls, in reality says he'll be sure to ask about people who have seen the fruit of the Holy Spirit, and finally says they'll fly to the forest of divine solitude, in an eerie place where the sky is made up of lightning and thunder, in the middle of a body of water on top of a rock. One bright flower in the dark was surrounded by snakes. The forest of divine solitude. It is a forbidden land in the east of the 9 continents. The forest itself is gigantic. The boy did not understand how they could find time to search for the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Li suggests splitting up and then reconvening after sundown. I like the idea myself. So everyone found their way through the woods. And then when night fell, the hero searched all day, but couldn't find even a shadow of the fruit. He was grilling a piece of meat that he found very appetizing, when his attention was drawn to a sound coming from the bushes. At the same second, a chanterelle fell out of a bush. So strong the kepi she lifted put a piece of meat flying upward. He fell to the ground. Lin walked beside him. She picked it up and put it back on the fire where it belonged. The frightened vixen only now heard the master's voice. Sitting on it, she stopped immediately. As soon as she realized who it was, already after a while, some tension was felt. A million noses just kept silent in spite of each other. The hero decided to ask what was wrong with them. Lin was very cold, like a snow queen. And the other one was crazy nervous, like she was being chased by dogs. And then the girls started answering together, and immediately ended it. The guy asked Xiao to speak. Turns out they've seen people of the King's Alliance at the borders. One of them killed the other with the words that it was a matter of the King's Alliance. Strangers should leave immediately. That's what made the girl panic so much. And then the hero remarked that he'd never wondered why the Royal Alliance was after the Chanterelle's head. By the time the kings of the Great Lian and Reed declared war on each other, but in the end, both kingdoms were defeated by a third. She had already seen soldiers from 2 armies once before. The King's Alliance announced that she had escaped from the battlefield, and that she was the cause of all that had happened. And it was the representatives of the Royal Alliance, with the king's orders to hunt her down. And Lin was surprised that Qingqiu's rank didn't help in any way in this situation. Because of the split in the alliance, she is so hated. So Qingqiu didn't protect her because of that. She needs to find proof that the alliance defamed them. But immediately the master told her to relax. He would protect her anyway. He'll wash away the false accusations. Only Xiao heard this and rushed over to hug and thank the hero. Immediately he wondered why Lin's face was so unsatisfied. It turns out she also saw soldiers. Warlord Kun Yin was looking for something in this forest. The Kun Yuan Kingdom soldiers didn't understand what they were looking for. But still, the general's order, and having said all that, she was silent again. The hero says that he and the vixen are good people who would never give her up. He asks her to speak, and then she overcomes herself and agrees, and then she starts to say that she was actually translated. She was a cruel princess in a past life. Foxy didn't understand what her little sister was talking about, and the hero calmly ate his meal. Silently, they began to glance at each other. Qin said about how she didn't look much like a cruel princess in his opinion, but Lin immediately asked the teacher not to pretend. She didn't ask how he guessed who she was. In the past life, with King Kun Yuan and the ancestors, with these forces in the 3rd heaven of the divinity limit. But they stabbed her in the back when she was standing on the teleportation field. Their chief weapon was her inferior August weapon. She alone will not retaliate, but if they find her, the girl will fall again. But then Qin said that no matter what you have to go through, it's a necessary revenge, and he would help with it, and gave her a piece of cooked meat. The August weapons are wielded by a few, but is a lowly August weapon so important? But such weapons are very difficult to manufacture. The 9 continents don't have enough resources for it. The hero wondered if the system would teach him how to smelt such a weapon. Had he missed it? A secret limit of strongmen from the peak of the divinity limit appeared on the mountain boundary. Someone discussed that the secret limit could accommodate those being perfected from the limit of holiness. Gifted Xinlian Kingdom, can this guy get hold of the treasure? The second one with the armband confirmed that the limit of divinity had appeared, and him, a half-saint from the Liangshen Valley, went to the border. And here's the latest Bin Suyan. He says he joined in the fun, too. The very conflict between the armies began because they did not share the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Almost all of the soldiers were killed by the Union representatives. There were virtually none left. The 3 brothers see only one man. Unable to find him, he returns to search, but they will find him. But the soldier wanted to take him for his king. And here are the brothers for the master of the King's Alliance. All of this was watched by the heroes. The fight was still in full swing. But that's where Lin's Ice Phoenix attack stopped her. And soon Foxy wasn't left out either. The soldier didn't understand who this girl was here, and how she dared to attack him. Lin claimed she was the one who would kill him. The Tsar's union wasn't going to stop because of some lowlife, and as soon as the brothers meet an enemy, they exterminate him. But Foxy's attack was able to change everything in their plans. Meanwhile, Qin had already found such an important flower for him and the others. Just as something notices, there were incomprehensible air bubbles forming on the body of water. And the moment the hero wonders what it is, a creature emerges from the water. The shadow of it covers all those who were involved in the battle. Everyone was in indescribable shock at what they saw. There appeared to be another monster keeper, an insanely huge 3-headed snake protecting the Holy Spirit. And at the sight of it, the hero had only one question: whether it would be possible to eat it. As Lin flies over, he decides to attack the cold-blooded one, and using the execution of the Ice Phoenix decides to attack. But there was not a single trace left after the blow. It was as if nothing had happened. The August weapon's attack has no effect whatsoever. The serpent chooses the first course. It's a soldier of the kingdom, and in an instant, she swallowed it. The snake glared shamelessly at the hero, who didn't care much for it. One of Xar's Union brothers also gets laid in a second, and soon it's the next one's turn. One brother is left on his own with the monster. Lin realizes that this is a completely unusual snake, and somehow explain your thought. She goes into a frenzy of shock at what she saw with her own eyes. Her master was on one of the monster's heads. It was as if nothing had happened, and it was peaceful completely. The serpent is afraid of people like Wing, and when he realized that, he decided to try to subdue him. Lin didn't understand what was going on. The girl asked the guy to get out of there. The guy was in indescribable shock at the fact that the hero was able to subdue such a powerful monster. Chen was displeased that the girl was just throwing her giant sword around like this for nothing. And then the hero turns his attention to the remaining representative of the Royal Alliance. The guy realizes he's in a completely uncomfortable position. Qin orders the serpent to eat him, and the remaining brother started running away, begging to be rescued. The hero felt as if he had forgotten something. Even though he had taken the fruit, Xiao was overwhelmed with gigantic fear because of the snake that had been taken away. After an indefinite amount of time, she's sitting in a hidden sword and asking if it's going to explode. Lin thinks so, since it happens virtually every time. All the while, they watched from the sidelines as the hero tried to make the right pill in the forge, and then in an unexpected moment, an explosion went off. It was just as Lin had predicted, and Foxy was happy about the outcome, but the sound of Chinya's joy could be heard. According to But's words, he had finally succeeded. He created an elixir, one that could raise any limit to the third heaven. The girls listened solely to one fact, the fact that there are not many caricatures of all of them. The hero is about to decide what the third vein will look like. Ella. Ying wonders where they're going, but soon everyone will know the secret. And then after thinking the hero is so mysterious, he gives the elixir away. He orders her to eat and focus on hardening. All humans, with a limit to the third heaven, will rise to a new... The girl was insanely happy that this drink had gotten to her. For such joy, she thanked the teacher with a kiss on the cheek, and decides to go with a happy look. And Qin was in mad joy, and began to think that did she really like him? At the same moment, Foxy Girl didn't understand why she didn't get it. And when he heard this desire, he decided to inquire. As the sun was setting, the hero couldn't have thought of the fact that the vixen wanted the pill of the celestial man. And already ready to give it to her, he wonders if Xiao is ready. And at the same moment he threw it to her, she caught it with her mouth. She loved the flavor of the pill. The hero, on the other hand, is more determined to have an insanely fluffy tail. The vixen felt a very disconcerting feeling. The guy, on the other hand, shared that this is how he envisioned that tail. She was in a mad rage, as chanterelle tails are not to be touched. And the hero replied that he didn't know anything about it. He wanted to touch it twice. Turns out the tail can only be touched by her lover. So how's she gonna get married? But the hero thought he could keep her without any problem. In one of the palaces of the Peak of the Hidden Sword, the hero prayed, addressing the Supreme Lord Lao. Soon he was listing all the remaining gods and saints, before hitting the mark, to get a new reward from the system. As a reward, he received many new levels, different stats, as well as an August level item. But here's what wasn't there. This development the hero was very much displeased with. Immediately, a girl nearby inquired what the master was doing. He asked her to come to him. Her teacher asks her to go to one of the August secret precincts in the Border of Worlds. The August 1 limit on the Border of Worlds is the limit on a mountaintop, where the strongest gather before their death. Two of the crowd, chatting about how much more interesting things to be found. There's a rumor that a receiver was left there 30,000 years ago, which, if found, could make you the most powerful man in the world. People's conflicts were growing more and more intense. Especially King Dianfeng had nominated people with tremendous strength. And here comes the Prince of the Kingdom of Xinling. With his entourage, he didn't think there would be so many people here. Queen Bingshuan's daughter couldn't help but come since he had gathered here. All the more august weapons are at stake. An adept of the Valley of the Sword God, who had also come. Notice that King Nudaya's blade belonged to their valley, and then the Tsarevich asks to stop and look the other way. They assumed someone else had come to them. Turns out it was already Lin herself. The adept swept her body with the will of the sword. She is not beneath him. The princess had not yet seen her. Did she really come from other lands? The Tsarevich took note of her extraterrestrial beauty. He landed beside her. The girl wondered if he had any business with her. He introduces himself, voicing his title, and asks her to remove her veil. But without waiting for the moment, she decides to do it herself. But the girl did not quarrel, and attacked the hero for such insolence. He was surprised that a single swing of her sword could shatter his protective spirit. But he wasn't the only one who noticed it. Everyone in the crowd appreciated Lin, and wondered where she came from. Lin's sword will is insanely strong, and she herself is in the second heaven of sainthood. So the sword also looks like one of the semi-holy ones. The Kingsman decides since she hurt him, she should keep the sword as an apology. If she wants to stay alive, Lin remarks that they don't call it the most dirt-free for nothing, but it wouldn't take a single weapon for a girl to beat him up. He attacks the girl with indescribable displeasure over her words, but the girl easily dodged his attack and immediately touched him with one hand and turned his world upside down. The crowd was shocked to see the royal blood of Chance Lan being suppressed by Lin's blood. That outcome only made the guy hotter. Now he wanted to grab her, to take all of her, and immediately yelled out a name, Uncle Moon, and a request to grab this girl. Lin was surprised that he was asking for help like a child after being defeated, and someone had already shown up from behind. The girl turned around at the word that someone would do the Kingsman's bidding, guardian of the Tsarevich's path, asked to return with him to the kingdom, but once he stopped and was deciding what he should do, he was surprised. He was flown in by some kind of magic directly into his body. He was thrown right back where the Tsarevich was. He began to wonder who it was, and a portal formed near Lin. Bit by bit, the man was coming out of it, and he wondered if the keeper was the only one who could protect the way. Lin said it wouldn't work. It would scare them in the dark. The uncle suggested that His Majesty should attack later, when they are in the secret limit, and as they were leaving, he said that this time he'd spoiled the girl. But next time it wouldn't be like that. The crowd began to reflect on what they had just seen. It's probably already at the limit that we need to get away from them. After a while, the conversations came to a halt. The girl pondered the fact that the Tsarevich and the Adept of the Sword God had most likely teamed up. Just then, a girl came to her with a greeting. She introduced herself, and she noticed that Lin had also noticed that Feng and Bei had sung together, and suggested that they form a team of their own. After thinking a bit about such an interesting offer, she agrees. And then comes word that the secret limit is finally open, and all the people went through the portal. Already a large number of people have been stranded in the desert. The people realized that now they only had to go forward. After some time, the Adept and the Kingsman finally reached a definite destination. They were now in front of another teleporter. Not all people were able to get there. Meanwhile, the Apprentice reports that the gate has opened, and the Apprentice claims they've already gone in. Then a stream of energy came from the sky and hit the building. No one has changed why it's become like this. The student wondered why the teacher was running away from her. He's the master. But the teacher managed to hide by closing the door. But the student tried to break it, and he asked me to open the door now. He was in a desperate situation. He couldn't use magic. All turned into mortals. And then he noticed that the main sounds had died down. Had he gone? He decides to listen more closely. And then he notices that the closet he's in retained a gigantic amount of tonic pills in it. He hadn't noticed it before, but it's not the worst situation for him. An infinite number of pots were overflowing to the brim with them, and then something confused him. A hand emerged from the pot, and the voice of his apprentice became audible, claiming to have found the master. Dropped the pot startled. The monster kept coming out of it. He asked me not to run away from the teacher anymore, and to go with him. The teacher's cries of pain could be heard from outside. Meanwhile, in one magical place, the representatives of the two kingdoms of Shen and Hao, and the representative of the Sword God were in the same place. All of this was seen from the air by the hero, who was delighted to see that everyone was on board. Chinya had a premonition that the reward from the system would probably be much better this time around. He decides to look something up on the menu. He also learns that Miao Lin will get a speed boost here. Meanwhile, in the temple, all those who had passed the tests of space were on their knees, in front of a huge golden statue, which absorbed the power. Everyone looked at her without taking their eyes off her. The hero was also able to see, with the help of the girl's talisman, assuming it wasn't possessed by a scarlet spirit, and then he looked also intrigued. Xin realized that it was the goat gaining strength, with Lin's help. In the form of his shrunken self, he climbed out and summoned a weapon to his aid, and lets go of the skill, the sword of life and death, toward him, and destroys some important magical object, which was taller than the statue. And then the statue's eyes opened, and a voice formed. It inquired who had ruined his great sacrifice. Shinya did well, which he was insanely happy about, and immediately hid back into the mascot. And soon, little by little, people began to come to their senses. From the very beginning, as soon as they entered the secret limit, they entered the limit of illusion. The statue sized the life force of the dead chosen ones. It's probably King Guyang, and he purposely built this place to be reborn. And now that they had found out, he stood on his own 2 feet, And he's screaming about how everybody's gonna die here. Everyone decides that since it's just the four of them, they should team up with him. He was able to return to the second heaven of the limit of holiness. They won't be able to win about it. They would just become food for him. But out of fear, they decide to attack together. Everyone decides to use a special attack. Lin is the heart of the sword, Princess Haotian, adept to 1,000 clanks, and Tsarevich is a 22 fire dough. But that didn't stop the Tsar. He decides to deal with the brats, and to show you the king's skill. A crazy power wave was created by all of this, and a huge explosion in the temple. The statue was destroyed. Again, still, it didn't work out for him to get his life back. Coming out of the portal, Lin helped the princess walk, and when the Tsarevich came out of the portal, he cried out that she was wearing King Gu Yan's ring on her hand, and Gu Yang's blade is in Mu Qingqing's hands. An adept interrupted him. Princess Hao wondered if the adepts and kingdom wanted to declare war. But the guys immediately dismissed these words. All they want is a click and a ring, which the young princess has. But the Tsarevich gets the girl. Then she gets the artifact. That way he won't be offended. But the princess couldn't let that happen. She decides to stop them. But then she noticed something that surprised her immensely. A hero appeared between the boys. He wondered if they wanted to do something bad to his student, and offers to play a game with him, and if they lose, the case stays where it is. And nothing will change. The queen appreciated Qin's beauty first. And soon, the level of magic that emanated from him as well. The Tsarevich didn't realize he was here. He didn't notice him at all, and the adept assumed he had the limit of the living spirit. But people with such a limit can't fly. Synchronously, the guys stepped away from him and asked who he was. Hero, explain that you just came here to play. They weren't happy that someone was daring to mock them. And it doesn't matter how he took on the appearance of a living spirit. They'll still skin him. And the hero, smiling, offers to wrestle with them and uses the sword of life and death. The girl was shocked that he had only drawn his sword, and already he was showing such power. The hero wonders if the guys have any techniques. The Tsarevich realized that he was facing a completely unusual person. He's got an august weapon, and Woai is already at the portal. They wondered what they should do in such a situation. They were playing, and everyone didn't want to lose. Everyone had confidence, and the guy realizes he better not mess with Lin. Otherwise, he'd have had his fists in the air by now. And yet he walks, and Lin looks at him. Just like that, the voice of the hero becomes audible to everyone. He was addressing the student. She immediately replies that she is here. And the Tsarevna immediately offers 2 by 2, but the enemy doesn't have the courage. The guy was worried that he didn't think she might have a teacher. The hero shriekingly wonders if Lin is doing well, in some kind of black sphere, and she says it's fine, and they play chess. But then they asked her to close the clan, because it didn't sound good that while the elders were fighting, they were just, sitting around playing. Qin was glad since there was apparently no problem. Then he calmly, and then, in the back, one of the enemies decides to attack, which the hero notices, but his attack is interrupted by the queen. And though the enemy was unhappy that she was meddling in the wrong business, but she remembers that she was just trying to protect her niece, and decides to take on Lan Yang Wan, and the hero agrees to it. And the enemy uses one of his skills. He'll take care of the girl, and let the other one take care of the hero, and immediately uses his own ability. Open lands, and an entire magical realm has been created, and it turned out that the two of them remained in a closed predilection. So the limit of divinity can be a field of knowledge. The hero began to feel the pressure change. Gravity has become heavier. We need to use our skills more sparingly, but against an enemy like this, you have to use it to the fullest. You can't even absorb external power. But still, none of this should affect him. And so he's energized, and he goes to the enemy. The guy wonders what the hero wants to accomplish. He attacks his field without his own, and though the hero is filled with determination, he's still the best swordsman, and they both use their techniques to start flying at the enemy. The hero's strength and sword skills were evaluated, but still a sword master holding a sharp blade would not be connected to him materially. And immediately with a sword made of light, he attacks Chinya. There was an insanely huge, destructive explosion, but still the hero survived. And at the same moment, he realized that perfecting the sword had 2 options. The guy was surprised that he stayed alive, even though the hero was hit in the head. But now it's the hero's turn to be beaten, and he uses one of his abilities. Immediately he struck the air with his sword. The opponent didn't really understand such a thing. Why would he just hit? But immediately, cuts formed on his body. They bled. He couldn't even identify. The guy couldn't believe such a skill. Was he on the verge of divinity? And from the space he created, some kind of flashes began to emanate, which were visible to the others. And in a moment it was destroyed, and two guys just fell off it. The enemy was unconscious. The girl asked her opponent if he already wanted to continue the battle. Immediately, the young blood noticed that their field of space was beginning to erode as well. And one guy noticed his mentor lying on the ground. They took him in. And they noticed that he was very lucky. Just then, Lin narrated with her master. And her friend got teary-eyed at his beauty. Lin brought him a stock ring, for which Qin praised her. Immediately, the woman introduced herself as Mu Qin's aunt. And in response, the hero introduced himself as Master Lin. And then just then, the niece turned to Uncle Qingyu. He wondered if he was really old to be called that. And the girl apologized for such an improper tone. Since Qin is more like her older brother, the queen wonders if the guys want to stay in her kingdom in their free time. But the hero refuses, as they need to go back to the sect, so that no one will worry there. She accepted it, and she said if ever they wanted to come, let them come. But before they did, to inform the plaque, and having finally finished the adventure with the secret August limit. The hero wonders what reward the system will give him. And here he does get the recipe for the roots of the August weapon, for which he was overjoyed. And Lin, watching everything from the sidelines, was shocked that he was just jumping around and promising himself again for nothing. After a while, already in Haoshou village, which was located in the Haotian kingdom, went out to Lin Street. They exchanged greetings with the master. It had been 3 months since they had left the frontier, and from that moment on, in Lin's opinion, something happened to Qinya. When they got back to the top, he gathered everyone, and said that he would improve the creation of purple dust. The girl inquired why she had been cooped up in Haoshou for 3 months already. In response, she received a promise that she and Baiju would find out tonight. And then there was also Foxy, who was very sleepy, but she came at the smell of food. The hero has noticed that for 3 whole months she has been doing nothing but eating and sleeping. One wonders if she is a pig, and not Foxy. Already when the sun had set behind the mountains, and then the girls heard that the hero wanted to engage in forging August weapons. They immediately began to examine his condition. The temperature was normal, pulse was normal, and there was also no harassment. The hero would be quite angry. He ordered them to place their hands on part of the table. Since he had sealed the spiritual power, he decided to give up control of the anvil in the field to them. Immediately, the order for them to get ready, and an insane number of times the hammer was struck. Lin was shocked at this way of forging. With each blow, the next one was even stronger. And since the hero had no energy at the moment, he only used his powerful body. Foxy noticed that he continued to cast the spell of 1,000 heavenly hammers. She was surprised that he could keep it up for 3 days. And after a moment, Qin stopped with the fact that he was about to die from such a thing soon enough. Lin was surprised that the master gave up so quickly, but here she did turn her attention elsewhere. In the forge where the hero struck with all his might was an object. The girls were shocked that indeed the hero had succeeded in doing what he wanted to do. And when he took it in his hands, he decided to name this fruit of his efforts, the August Blade of Dragon patterning. Just then, it was heard that someone was knocking on the front gate, and when I opened them, there were 2 men lying there. Foxy shouted to the foreman that someone had come to see them. Already inside, they put them on the bed. They didn't have a single wound. But Lin's still bandaged. The hero evaluates the girls' work, and notes that they don't look much like outlaws. So let them rest here for the night. So let the girls go and get an early night's rest. And then it became audible that the girl was calling for her grandfather through the dream. They were looking for him. Qin thought that she was probably having a nightmare right now. As he got closer, he noticed that some kind of fire was coming from the man. It turned out to be a killing curse he had on his heart. In a little while. In the afternoon, the girls were engaged in the old man's resolution. His granddaughter noticed that her grandfather was feeling better. He was able to see his granddaughter. But the hero noticed that she needed to keep working more. And while the grandfather was thanking the girls for helping him with the ruling, then the hero quarreled with his grandson about the amount of firewood. Qin claimed that he had calculated everything, and if they didn't help them, the old man would die in a month already. So the girl decided to ask if it was true, and he didn't know how to properly answer his granddaughter. After a time, at the table, the hero wants to know why a killing curse was placed on the man, and who they are in general, and he introduced himself as Wu Zong, and his grandson is Zong Yun. Not so long ago, They went on a treasure hunt with the head of the Rukas cult. And finally, at one point, they found it. The August weapon of Bannu. And he and No Sho, the head, were overjoyed beyond belief. All three weapons were there. A companion stabbed Woot in the back and cast a curse on him that kills the host. In the beginning, it was fashionable to take him off, but since he was detained, it was no longer possible. After his escape, the curse merged with him. It has continuously eaten away at his life. He could only use his perfection to stop it. Grandson tired his feet and anxiously inquired that their sect had been destroyed. Grandpa confirmed everything, and then No Shaw decided to pull the plug. He wiped out everyone in the sect. Jiang only managed to save his grandson. He himself was shocked. After this whole story, the hero inquired on which of the Luoho's limits. Or to put it another way, who is the strongest in this sect? It turns out that the Rakshasa sect's strongest is Luoho. He's in the second heaven of sainthood, pouring tea into a cup. The hero asked if he was really in second heaven, and at the same moment he tells the old man to take the oath of the heavenly way. And then the hero will help him with the canon of sitting and eternal life. As soon as he heard that, he had the strangest thoughts, like this guy saved him, but at the same time he wants to make a slave out of him. Chin inquired about what had happened. He reminded him that although the curse didn't bother him at the moment, it was still there. There were only two things that could help him expel the curse, but everything has a price, and the old man wonders what it is, and the hero simply responds, "That's it." And everyone fell silent after those words, generally due to shock, but the hero explained that he was only joking. And Zhongwu will have to become the hero's bodyguard. He was scared to death because of such jokes, but still he agreed to become a bodyguard, and even took an oath to the heavenly way. But on one condition, he wants retribution. Elsewhere, where there was a mad thunderstorm, in his temple, Luoho felt that someone wanted to him. Already in the light of day, in the city of Qinyun, some guy was explaining the subject of one of the paintings. It was as if he was listening to the sound of the sea, so wide and calm. He felt that he had always misunderstood the water theme, because he was stuck in the first heaven of nirvana, and now the theme of the new landscape suited him. Might even help him break through. He wondered how much such a painting was worth. Turns out, it was worth 100,000 spirit stones. The price was not pleasant at all, even though it was still 20% off, but still decides to buy it, and hopes he can make that kind of money again. But on his way out, still realized that his heart was sad for his money, but he decides to ignore them and get stronger. On the second floor of the same building from where the boy had come from, Lin and the teacher were standing there.
Lin wondered if Chin had left Haoshu village to buy a painting here, and he confirmed it.
But the girl had her doubts about that. It seemed to her that he had not come here just for the painting. But still, he claims that this one is true, and Lin needs to trust his teacher. And then a lady came out announcing that girls are half-price discount today, and Lin immediately realized the true reason why the hero had come here, which was not a good thing. The character in his thoughts really just wanted to fulfill a task from the system. It showed up unexpectedly, and should provide an interesting reward. It was already evening. The old man met the hero again. 2 months had passed since their last meeting, and the hero had already swept up that he was spared from the killing curse, and perfection restored to the second limit. So Chin wants Zhongwu to not delay himself any longer, and set off tonight. And since the old man has no weapon, the hero offers up his butcher knife. It performs very well in peacetime. When cutting vegetables or meat, the man was shocked as he realized that it was an August weapon. Other people would kill for such a thing, and Chin was willing to give it to Zong for nothing. But he also didn't understand why it was so ugly. Immediately, in Luoho's palace, under a thunderstorm, someone could be heard calling for him. When he saw the man who called him, he said he had been looking for this man for a long time, and I didn't think it would just come to him. The old man hoped that his opponent would be able to smile afterward as well. And at the same moment, he pulled out his new weapon. Ace turned his attention to him, and laughed, for since the hero had no weapons, they could lend him. But the old man asked Luo to stop talking nonsense. Today, Zong will avenge everything. He apologized, but still picked up on the strange idea of fighting with a kitchen knife. And then the old man, brimming with determination, went at his opponent. The confident Luo thought that Zong had greatly overestimated himself here. And then there was a tremendous thud against the ground with the best energy. Luo was able to stop Zong's attack, but it also cost a certain amount of effort. But his katanas didn't last very long. They began to crack under the pressure. A large number of strikes from the old man have passed through his opponent's body, and the blades failed. And Lo was shocked at this, for they were August. Zong himself was surprised that the knife in his hands would prove to be so powerful. The opponent was trying to call for help already, but Zong was against this. The monks have summoned a secret spell, the Rakshasas and Asuras. It took Luoho's hand in its own to protect him, just as he had asked, and then started growling at the old man, who was surprised by such magic. So the monks also tried to put a barrier on him for protection. Luo, on the other hand, asked Zong not to touch him, let him be his. So he decides to put the killing curse back on the old man, and already with it, the monster starts swinging at the hero. The old man manages to dodge, and asks his opponent if he thinks there's nothing he can do to them. They underestimate too much the power of the august weapon he has in his hand, and he has no problem cutting through everyone with his power, and he keeps going forward to the goal of killing Luoho. But Against says that still the old man is already behind him. Since the spell has already ended, holding the doll in his hand, he has to give his life to him and take it from Zong. Once again, the old man's heart begins to be encompassed by the fetters of the spell. He's gonna die right here. He got away last time, but not this time. But immediately all the effects of the spell and chains subsided. The doll was torn to pieces. Lo didn't understand how this was possible, how a spell could fail to work. But the old man explains that one son of his family has a skill in front of him, which helped him overcome the spell. This was something he couldn't believe. There's not a single person who could have done it. And then the shock of his adversary increased even more when he had a guess. He presented the old man with the question himself, and then, in the blink of an eye, Zong succeeded in cutting his opponent in two. What Luohao couldn't believe was true happened. In a little while, in the afternoon, in the village, the old man gives his master his weapons with words of thanks, and informs him that all is complete. But Zong would also like to get one interesting piece of advice from the hero. He recognized the gigantic power of the knife he was fighting with, and he'd like to hear its owner tell its story. And with a smile, Chin explains that he made it. There was a vegetable knife missing in the kitchen. So he thought about it and created one. He had originally thought for 3 days and 3 nights about the shape of the sword. And then 3 seconds later, it just sort of came out without him thinking. The old man's shock was indescribable. He already thought that the Lord was not an ordinary person after he passed on the skill. But to be this much, to create an august weapon of such power in 3 seconds so easily for him. But it was all in Zong's mind, and he himself said that it was simply unfathomable. The only thing the old man needs is to be a loyal hero. And then Chin will make an august weapon for him too. And Zong wondered if such a thing was even possible. As he sipped his tea, the guy remembered his grandson. He said that he would have one of these weapons too. After this, the old man knelt down and swore on his life that he would be loyal to his lord. Frankly speaking, he had previously doubted but Chin saved him, and the old man decided to squeal 100-fold. But before the battle, walking through the woods to the sect's palace, he wondered who made an august weapon in the form of a common vegetable knife. His family was killed with such a weapon, and he thought the Lord was mocking him. He had no august weapon in his hand. And with a sigh of relief, saying it's bullshit. But a moment later, he cut a huge hole several meters into it. His surprise was unparalleled. Now the hero realized who made a furrow in the forest. Zong promised to straighten it out in no time. The hero swept up that the old man would have one thing to do beforehand. It turns out that in the morning, Zong Yan was chopping wood, and decided to throw it into the furrow. It just so happened that he fell in there, and there's no way for Hero to get him out. So Grandpa's gotta come up with something. And indeed, the grandson just got stuck in a very tight spot. He's really worried about not wanting to die here. I mean, he's not even married. And she's crying out for help with all her might. In the same city, inside the store. Wondering why the hero is replacing the store owner, there's a girl who's interested in that. Turns out she commissioned 3 paintings by a famous artist, and today she wants to take them back, and Chin had heard of her. A couple days ago, Zong had called him to help draw some pictures of famous blades. Turns out he painted them for her. As soon as the girl found out about it, she wondered if he was the one who painted all those masterpieces. She could feel the presence of spiritual power in the guy. He could paint such profound pictures. Maybe he's at the limit of his divinity. Oke was interested in other works, and asked if she could see them. And the legend of the white serpent was written there, while the girl was reading. Wuyan tied up the paintings and handed them over. The girl insanely enjoyed the story she had written. It was insanely interesting. Except that the sequel was already in chapter 2. And the girl was annoyed that it hadn't been written yet. And already on the hero's question about the quality of the book, the girl said that it was very interesting and overly exciting. But there is one flaw, very little written, and wonders where the sequel is. Chin replies that he is in the process of writing. Although he is not the author, it was based on events from the real world. Of course, he didn't say that. And then the girl exclaimed that she had thought of something. She offers to sell the printing rights to her house. Her name is Lin Wan, her ancestral home is one of the two greats. And the hero reflected that, indeed, he had only been refused by the house of Chinmu, and now immediately offered to Lin, and he agrees to give the seal of the legend of the White Serpent to her. She was overjoyed, and promised that her clan would take only 2 shares of the profits, and the rest to the hero. As the girl and her sister were leaving, she asked why the house would receive such a small amount of money, to which the girl explained that it would be a way to get more clients. People will read the book and realize how cool it is. And here it was a month later. People everywhere were talking about the hero's book. They were analyzing who was right and who was wrong. And then a shout was heard in one of the palaces. The daughter burst into the father's office and announced that the book released by the House of Lin has become very popular among people. Chin Yu is the daughter of the head of the Chin clan. She explained that if the goods they bought didn't pay off, then they wouldn't have enough spirit stones. The head of the clan, Chin Hongming, was shocked by such news. He orders a meeting of all owners and managers.